Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Hamburg Grand Prix. Welcome to the tiebreak day of the quarterfinals, with three people being already in the semi-final, with Chris playing against Maxime Vachier-Lagrave in the semi-final. We are all waiting to know the last semi-finalist. So today we have Daniil Dubov, current Rapid World Champion, facing 8-time Russian champion Peter Svidler in what I hope to be very exciting tiebreak for the place in the semi-final in Hamburg. Once again, a reminder how other matches went. I believe you've seen the recap video. Topalov practically had no chance to come back in game 2 against Maxime Vachier-Lagrave after losing first game with the white pieces. Chris somewhat unexpectedly has won with black against David Navarra after Navarra perhaps pushed it too far, and then young Krzysztof Duda got lucky in a way, because in the position where his opponent Yu Yan-Yi could still put a decent fight and try to hold the draw. The Chinese just blundered terribly and had to reside a few moves later. So here we are. Here them are heroes, and D2, D4 will be the move for Daniil Dubov, made on the board by Mr. Darian Akins, Consul General of the United States of America in Hamburg. So I believe the game will be started right now. Yeah, well, the clock's pressed. Daniil Dubov has the white pieces in game 1, and welcome chat. A lot of people I can see rooting for both Svidler and Dubov. I'd say both of them are very sympathetic players, if you ask me. So I don't mind any result as long as the games are entertaining. And well, they repeat the Grunfeld defense, the one that was played in their classical game, and bishop c4 variation is the same variation that they've played in the classical game. No surprises so far. No surprises so far. So castle short, and then I believe Svidler went for... no, wait. Yeah, b6. So that's new. That's new. He opted for queen c7 and rook d8 in the previous game. So, well, we are setting up the digital board for you guys, and meanwhile, let me once again repeat the names of the sponsors, the guys who made this event possible. So once again, thanks to Fosagra, strategic partner of the entire Grand Prix series, Algorand, official blockchain partner, PLS Sieta Shipyard, the partner of Hamburg leg of the Grand Prix, and then Kaspersky, official cybersecurity partner of the cycle. All right, so it seems we have little difficulties with the digital board, but okay, let's try to get a close-up from the camera view, because it's, it's only one game. So far, no big surprises, it would seem. So the Grunfeld defense, last move h4 is, well, maybe something Peter Svidler is not sure about, but this one is a typical way of white trying to develop the initiative against black's king side. So once again, white has a very strong center, and undercover, so to speak, of this center, he wants to develop the kingside attack. So it does seem to be possible to show the digital board. So, well, just quickly, let's change the view. Let's see what's going on the board. And, well, not a lot of people do that, but Dubov leaves the board during the rapid game. So both Peter Svidler and Daniil Dubov do this from time to time, even though most of the players, don't really leave the board when it comes to rapid. The reminder, the time control is 25 minutes plus 10 seconds, with, so 10 seconds increment after each move. In case of a tie, if this little tie-break match out of 2 games with 25 plus 10 goes 1-1, then the time control will be cut down to 10 minutes plus 10 seconds. Well, basically, same as we've seen in the previous round. We had one very long tie-break, and where Dubov was involved, namely the tie-break, quite a dramatic one between Dubov and Rajabov. All right, so that's the line that was, oh, wait a sec. The line that was played in game 1 between those two, where Peter went for queen c7. So this time he has played b7, b6. I believe that's the move Maxim Vasyarograph, another Grunfo specialist, uses in this position. h4, e6, h5, queen to h4. White swaps on g6 and goes f2, f3. Okay, and once again, as I said, I'm trying to read suggestions in the chat and so on, but guys, please accept it as it is. So no complaints, please. I mean, we are doing our best. I mean, that's what we have. Speaking of camera views, that's the best angle we can get. Right, so last move f3. White needed to guard the e4 pawn, right? And then something along the lines of queen d2, threatening bishop g5. If black queen leaves h4 for some reason, then king f2, rook h1 becomes a very serious idea. So black is advised to keep the queen on h4, of course, and try to apply as much pressure as possible, and as well as quickly as possible, the pressure on the d4 pawn. So I'm wondering if a move like rook d8 works immediately, or, well, perhaps capture first and then play rook d8, attacking d4 one more time. So if queen d2, I'm wondering if it's possible to capture on d4, say, takes here. Not really, it seems, right? Thought this one, but then both queen f2 and bishop f2 seem to save a piece for white. So black finds himself in real trouble. e5 over here doesn't work as well because of bishop g5. So I'm not quite sure what Peter has to do. He went for this position relatively quickly, right, playing this queen h4 thing. Because you could think of other reactions after h4. Like, hang on. Basically, over here you have a variety of moves for black. Once again, I've already mentioned during the classical game 1, bishop g4, which used to be Kasparov's choice in his matches versus Anatoly Karpov. Bishop g4, practically forcing f3, then swapping over there, going knight a5, so on and so on. So after b6, h4, you could try for this same setup with bishop g4. It's like same position with the inclusion of b6 and h4, right? Bishop g4, does it make sense over there? Because, probably not, because it allows for bishop d5. That's the important difference. So that black has played b7, b6 already. So now the rook is hanging. Okay, but once again, Peter played e7, e6 pretty quickly, perhaps relying on this queen's development to h4. So a swap happens, f3. Must be a theory still, right? E5, instead of e5, knight e5 maybe. How is it? So, you mean takes, go rook d8 after queen d2, go knight e5. Is that the... Is that what you're suggesting? You have the point that white can't take, but after bishop b3, I'm not sure what black's next move is, because bishop g5 is still sort of threatening, right? Maybe black doesn't really have to go mad, but just to play bishop f6. Maybe bishop f6 is just a legit move. So guard g5, stop this bishop g5 nonsense, and then look for, maybe to complete development. Bishop b7, rook c8. Played in Ivanchuk Grishuk 2012. Thanks very much, chat. Yeah, I wasn't claiming that that's kind of a new position or something. Yeah, well, I did suspect that it's, it was played, but still, it's not that easy to navigate. And look at Peter. I mean, he's certainly not looking at the board, so he's trying to assess, the inbuilt database he has in his head on Grunfeld. Yeah. C takes, rook d8 and bishop b7? Ah, really? Is it possible to do this? Rook d8, queen d2 and bishop b7. Point being, if white goes over there, what do we do? Oh, we probably... Wait a sec. I don't quite understand how it works. There's supposed to be some tactic. Yeah. So say bishop takes, knight takes, rook takes, queen takes. Yeah. And we take on g5, but that's an exchange down, right? That's an exchange down. And knight takes, I can't really make work because bishop h4, you can capture on f3, but you're down a piece. Aha. Timofeyev, Kurnotov, both games drawn. Queen h8, yeah, queen h8 is a fair point. Yeah, this is the move I like, guys. This is the move I like. So, in a moment where white threatens bishop g5, why don't we just go queen h8, yeah? Adding more pressure on d4. Thanks for mentioning this. Dubov looks excited. Really? Didn't see him being excited. Okay, let me update on what has happened. Queen d2, indeed, bishop b7 was played. Ah, yeah, so after bishop g5, it's just queen h5. Fair enough. Just sacrificing the exchange for the dark square bishop and then perhaps getting a very strong compensation, if not just straight up better position. Because d4 is hanging, yeah? There is no way to guard d4. It's like e5, knight e5 is probably just terrible. Black is getting the pawn for an exchange, plus a lot of weaknesses for white. d5, at the very least, black can capture the exchange back. Yeah. So right you are, chat. Bishop b7 is a possible move. It was played. And Dubov replied with rook a to c1. So now, serious question. Queen h8. How is white planning to react to queen h8? Is it rook f to d1 then, in this case? Oh, bishop e5 played by Peter Swidler. Okay, that's cute. So, rather obvious threat of checkmate in 3. Rook a c1 is new, according to database. Ivanchuk has played rook a d1. Thanks, Lorinda, for keeping me updated. Peter's reaction, though, bishop e5 played pretty quickly. You know what? It's not the move you are coming up with at the board. So it's either he knows precisely what he is doing after rook a c1, or bishop e5 is a standard idea. Let's say he was checking the Ivanchuk game that you guys mentioned. He knew that after rook a d1 you can do this. That's in a way the option for black to stop bishop g5 nonsense. So he goes bishop e5, threatens the checkmate. After f4 goes back. That's what has happened with rook on c1. So perhaps he knew about the idea at the very least, maybe the precise moves order. So that after rook a c1, he thought, okay, how different it is. The rook is on c1 or d1. No, I don't care, I still play bishop e5. This is what has happened, and now it's Dubov who is thinking. So basically, black surrenders a couple of tempi by going to e5 and back, but provokes the pawn to f4, where it's far less comfortable, right? e4 pawn becomes a target. Plus, black queen gets the square on g4, if so will be the need. Like especially if white decides, okay, I mean, my center is too weak, so I'm going e5, shutting down this bishop on g7. That gives black a chance to play queen g4, you know, target the g2 pawn, and various knight e5s, knight d4s are there. Well, knight e5 especially, yeah, not knight e4. So e5 is certainly not the move in this position for white. What white has to do, that's a serious question. I mean, perhaps bishop d3 is something you... No, well, that's nonsense. No, d4 is hanging. Yeah, I thought bishop d3 so that the pawn on e4 is guarded, but then d4 is hanging. Surprised, to be honest, because by the speed Dubov has played his opening moves, you would expect him to know what to do. So it's either this bishop e5 and back to g7 is a new idea. Could be, that's possible. Or, you know, maybe he didn't check all his stuff in detail. Rook f3 played. Rook f3, getting it there, I suspect, to h3. Or what else can it be? Feels suspicious, though, if you ask me. What rook f3 does, it stops queen h8, right? That'd be ironic. I mean, the queen getting caught in the corner of the board. So queen h8 is certainly out of question. Rook f3 is the computer move. Well, fair enough. Fair enough. But what's the computer evaluation? That's an interesting question, though, because it does seem okay. Let's say black does something useful. Rook a c8. Why not? Rook h3, which seems to be kind of a logical follow-up, and I'm thinking of this one. So the queen is a bit awkward on one hand, right? Like has literally 0 squares. So if white somehow attacks the queen, it might as well get trapped. But at the same time, how does white do that? Because now, in case of king f2, for instance, I won't be surprised if something like knight d4 just works. Might just work. Let's find out together. It might work, it might not work as well, because at first I was hoping for this, and then take on c1, but there is a checkmate threat on, you know, checkmate threat on h8, and white has king e2. Obvious draw, yeah, funny. Yeah, so the reason why I'm asking what's the evaluation after rook f3, because I do suspect that white doesn't really threaten much in this position apart from rook h3 and then g3. So that was the point I was trying to make. So say after rook a c8, it might as well be that white has nothing better but to go to h3 and then g3. Is there any practical chance any of these guys can make it to candidates? Not really. Not really. It's kind of... Wait a sec. It's certainly a last tournament for Peter Svidler. For Dubov? It's the last tournament for Dubov as well. Yes, he lost in round 2 in Moscow, and he got eliminated in round 1, if I'm not mistaken, in Riga. So that's I wouldn't go and say mathematically impossible, but might as well be, in fact. Might as well be mathematically impossible to qualify. But not realistic at all. So instead of king f2, is knight g3 useful? I mean, first of all, we are waiting for Swidler's move. He didn't play the move just yet. Assuming it's rook c8, rook h3 there, and knight g3. So I see, guys, you want to play bishop e2, right? But then d4 is hanging. So after queen g4, white plays bishop d3 with the idea to go f5. Really? Oh, you mean if I start capturing those, it won't work for me for some reason? Say, how do we do this? Rook takes c8, black has to capture with the bishop, white trades, could trade everything. Oh, and go f5, you mean? Well, might as well be, and then queen to h6, yeah? Or queen c3. Ah, well, in fact, queen c3 is kind of winning. Because I was a bit scared of this check on d1, but it's just nothing. It's one check, and then the rook's hanging, the bishop's hanging, and in case of rook d8, there is a checkmate on h8. Yeah, you're right. What's the score? The score is 1-1. So 2 draws in classical games. And today, yeah, that's a first tiebreak game. So no score just yet. Rook a to c8 played, once again, a logical move, even though we couldn't make all the tactics work for black. But yeah, strongly suspect that there should be something for Peter Swidler. Swidler has 13 minutes, while Dubov is on 24. Yeah. But I don't know if you guys noticed during the last tiebreak, Dubov was playing very, very fast, even those games that didn't go his way. So, you know, maybe that's kind of his way of approach of playing rapid. So never be in a time trouble. You just play fast, sometimes too fast. Okay, so what do we know? That there is rook h3, and the move was played, as you can see from a camera view. Rook to h3. And feeling is that black kind of has to go for queen g4. It is very scary. It is, you know, it's like the queen might get trapped there, but basically, if you go back, it's even scarier. Let's be honest. I'm not sure what do we do in this case. Is it f5 really? Rook h3 played, still no move from Peter Swidler. Queen e7. Let's try to, let's try to think a bit. Queen e7. I would really love to play this. But I don't see how it works. I mean, winning an exchange like this after queen e4, bishop d8, it's by no means an achievement, right? Black captures back, has a pair of pawns for an exchange already. d4 is about to fall, so perhaps it's not the move. Could it be that queen e7 is, in fact, to be preferred over queen g4? Because at first I thought it has to be just bad, queen to e7. Well, queen g4 played, nevertheless. Even though it was not clear how to refute queen e7, but queen g4, as we initially thought, is... Dubov brilliancy sometimes beyond surreal. You mean his European Team Championship games? Yes, it was really, really impressive. The way Dubov played it, European team. Computer had queen e7, yeah? So computer... was it the first choice of computer, queen e7? Because queen g4 is kind of what you are typically opting for in the Grunfeld. The feel of it is that it looks suspicious, it might as well be suspicious, but somehow it's holding on those like little tactical tricks. So queen g4 is a grunfeld-ish move, if I'm allowed to say so. Might as well be that queen e7 was just a better move. Did we somehow refute this one? We were told bishop d3, right? Told bishop d3 with the idea to play f5. That's one thing. Invitation to a draw. Absolutely, that's what I thought. Queen g4 is an invitation to a draw with rook g3, rook h3. Queen g4 is plus 1.1. Other two moves were better. You mean black had two moves? Well, technically queen f6 is the move, but it's like you practically never ever play queen f6. I mean, say it's either queen e7 or queen g4. Now Dubov is supposed to make weird bishop moves. Bishop d3, you mean. Knight g3, for a second time suggested in the chat. Knight g3, I believe knight takes d4 is an issue. Because there is no bishop e2, seemingly. No. So I'm not seeing it. No, it's not knight g3. Bishop d3 might as well be. Yeah, then we kind of figured out, yeah, once again, let me check. Knight takes d4, rook c8. What happens if knight e... well, there is no knight e2 whatsoever. There's bishop e2. Or queen e2. No, forget about it. So this line doesn't seem to work for black, right? Black has to recapture with the bishop to keep the d4 horsey protected. Then this happens. Wait, it's jumped all the way back to the real position. So one more time, bishop d3, knight captures on d4, white swaps on c8 in this moment, captures on d4. Then this we figured out is seemingly just lost for black, right? Could black try to sack an exchange and take on d4 with the rook? Could black try to take on d4 with the rook? Because now queen c3 doesn't really work because of, at the very least, rook d8. There is no checkmate on h8. If white accepts this, this might be one of those positions where computer says +1, but for a human eye, it's a very, very good compensation for black. I won't be surprised if, if this is the case. It doesn't look like +1 even to a computer eye. So really don't know. People claim it's a draw in the chat. Well, draw if... I mean, what Dubov has played? No, nothing just yet. Huh? Still Dubov to move. It's hard to find the... Hard to find a follow-up for white that gives +1 advantage. So once again, guys, could you be so kind to provide me with the line computer's giving? Because someone was mentioned bishop d3. Well, queen e1 played by Daniil Dubov. I suspect it's not the computer move. That's a very human move, though, because rook h4 is the threat in this case. All right. So now we are talking some tactics, I suspect. So computer wants bishop b5. Yeah, those are the moves that really tough to understand. Bishop d3 or bishop b5, for instance. I mean, how on earth you play bishop b5 in this position? Yeah, it's like well, maybe in a classical game, like spending really a lot of time. Maybe you can delve that deep in the position so you understand it. All right, so rook h4 is threatening to trap the queen, right? So what do we do? Continue wasting time with the bishop, perhaps? Or it's too much? Knight takes d4. Okay. Okay, so no rook h4 for an obvious reason. There is a check on f3 in this case. If white captures over there, black, I suppose, takes with the bishop. Once again, no rook h3 because bishop e3. If you swap and go rook h4, you kind of still trap the queen. But then, oh, wait a sec. There should be some tactical point over there. Bishop d4, yeah, so they go towards this variation. So knight captures on d4, bishop captures on d4. Bishop takes, if Dubov decides to do so, black has no alternatives whatsoever. It's a threat of checkmate in one, right? So rook captures, rook h4. What's the move for? Hang on. Bishop d4 played already. Bishop d4. Am I too hasty with the rook now? I mean, you have to take it. There was a threat of checkmate in one. So this, and then is there anything like rook e4 was expecting? That's the position's on the board, right? I'm kind of getting it. You capture there. Then if white takes on g4, you trade on e1, take on c4, and you have the bishop plus 2 pawns for an exchange. And I was doubtful about the other line, because white can capture on e4. You take the rook, he takes the bishop, but there is seemingly rook c4 to black's rescue. And after rook c4, it all ends with a perpetual check. And after rook c4, you do have a check on b8. And black required to make one last precise move, king h7, because king g7, well, king g7 is also playable. I thought queen e5, but then the rook f6 was a tempo. So rook takes e4 is 1.14. How is that? Don't quite understand this one, Lorinda. Rook e4, I don't know if it gives black an advantage or not, but he has to do it, because otherwise it doesn't seem... I don't see a move, to be honest. Rook takes e4, of course, yes. And what does black do after... well, guys, you can capture on e4 with the bishop and play b5. Maybe this is the line computer likes. Maybe this is the line computer likes for black. And perhaps for a reason. Perhaps for a reason, because, yeah, black wins the exchange, seemingly gets the passed pawn on the c5, unless there is some f5. Maybe f5 is what white has to do. So once again, there is a pin on c-file, so you can't really move the bishop away. Rook got stuck on g4, so I believe f5 is what you end up doing, where black can't really take over there, because rook e4 and bishop f7 wins for white. Very typical discovered attack over there, right? Has to take with the bishop, it would seem. And then then white moves the rook to d4, let's say. And that one's tricky. That one's actually tricky, because if you take, you will have to swap the rooks. And this is something not very pleasant. I mean, a position like that is still, of course, in white's favor, because he will be able to win the a7 pawn. So I suspect it's... If queen e4, rook c4, wow. Whoa. Rook takes... That is just brilliant. Yeah, thanks, Lorinda. This is just brilliant, and perhaps black is just winning in this case. Now I come to realize, yeah, if rook takes, there is queen d1 check, followed by bishop takes e4. Yeah, that's brilliant. Okay. Does it mean that white has to go for this? But that's like a safe advantage for black. So Dubov is kind of misplayed it all. Yeah, best for white. I've already kind of figured this one out, but I sort of discarded this one because it might be the best option for white, but man, doesn't it look attractive? So that basically means that even though computer was claiming that queen g4 was a bad move, and perhaps it was, but queen e1 is certainly not a refutation. Computer is smart indeed. So rook h4, rook e4, and then perhaps Dubov figured out what's the trap. Then perhaps Dubov realized what's the... Yeah, because, you know, from afar, you could be settled for a draw. Well, the first line that I've spotted, that black can capture on h4, and after queen b7, go for rook c4 with a perpetual, right? That was the first line that I've mentioned. A check and back to h4, the perpetual. But yeah, but then having this position on the board, I believe he did realize a devilish trap of rook takes c4. One more time, you can't capture with the queen because g2 is a checkmate. You can't capture with the rook because of a check. Well, how bad is this one? You get to take the bishop on e4, you have pair of rooks versus queen. It's terribly bad. It's terribly bad. It's like the rooks are completely uncoordinated. Should be winning for black sooner or later. I mean, there is still some fight as black doesn't have the connected passed pawns. I don't see the way to win the a2 pawn immediately, but it's a terrible position. And ultimately, you can't take the queen because first rook c1 check and then bishop e4. Black will have tons of extra material. So I'm curious what he will end up doing. Daniel will win. How does he win this? It's like he'd better find a way to, which will allow him to fight for a draw with her, because yeah, he did blunder, it seems, with rook h4, or rather with queen e1, because seemingly there was no way back already. Yeah, I can't really think of any other move here. Well, impressive game by Swidler. Yes and no. Impressive tactic found by Swidler, but in a way, you know, if you don't have knight d4, what the hell you're supposed to do over here? So it's like nice tactic and nice tactical justification, but found out in a way out of desperation. And I'm still not 100% sure if he will play rook takes c4. Nice trap by Swidler, indeed. Yeah, if he plays rook c4, because once again, it depends on how familiar he is with the position, because I still believe it might be finishing the line I've shown. Queen e4, queen h4, and then a perpetual later on. Bishop d3 after rook d4. Yeah, I briefly thought of that, but is black really in trouble over here? It's like, I similarly can capture on f4, right? So that, yeah, I do get both. Oh, well, maybe I can't. Well, actually, yeah, could have been there. So here we go. After rook e4, I believe Dubov has identified that queen e4 would lose on the spot. Therefore, rook g4, swap on e1, and rook c4 was played. That's once again a very, very comfortable position for black, but one still needs to win it. One still needs to win it. So white can still put a very, very serious fight over there. Starting with, I suspect, a move like rook e2, because allowing black rook to the second rank might be somewhat problematic. So white's problem is, well, he's not even kind of down material, right? So technically it's a material equality, so white has the rook, black has the bishop and 2 pawns for the rook. This terrible piece on g4 is what white's problem is. So if he ever finds a way to bring this rook back into action, he might be in not such a terrible shape, Daniel Dubov, that is. So I'm wondering if it has to be rook e2 followed by king f2. Perhaps to start with king f2 is not a terrible idea. Because things like that, like for instance, black goes after third pawn, goes rook a4 and bishop d5. If you swap the rooks while taking the pawn on a2, it won't be that easy to win. So you should typically keep at least one pair of rooks on the board. Rook e3 instead of rook e2. Okay. So I have to see rook c4. Rook e3, so instead Dubov preferred to guard the third rank. How is that? So rook e3, and he'll gonna put the pawn on a3. Okay, got it. There is bishop e4 for black. That's another option. To put it over there and then to basically threatening to win the pawn. Say white goes a3, there is bishop f5, attacking the rook after rook h4, there is similarly g5. There is similarly g5. White can't take. And in case of rook g3, I do understand there is rook g3, but g4 and both rooks are ugly placed, none of them is able to guard the f4 pawn. And if you go for this rook endgame, does it look hopeless, right? Black will get his rook on the ideal square on a4, attacking both weaknesses. Rook on g4 is still stuck. It's already the other rook. One got exchanged for the pawn and the bishop, but the other rook got stuck on g4. So yeah, the more I look at it, the more I like, in a way, the more I like bishop e4, which was not played. Bishop d5, yeah, practical move, keeping all his stuff safe and sound. Maybe black doesn't really need to win the a pawn. Maybe he'll just push his pawns forward, like, say, b4. Well, in case of a3, once again, sooner or later this pawn has to be moved to a3. And then b5, hang on, b5, and then a5, b4, eventually getting it to b3. And just say, you know what, your rook from g4 is still not moving. Could be this. Over +2 for black, really? Yeah, could be. The problem though, that imagine, I don't know how it's happening in this particular case, but imagine black is left with an extra bishop and no pawns in the end. It would be technically a +3 advantage, which black can't win. a3, king to g7. Honestly, in this kind of position, we shouldn't be following like, you know, every single move and look at the computer evaluation, like -1.3, I can see in the chat -1.4. It's not that important. I mean, it's clear black is better. It's very close to decisive advantage, but not yet a decisive advantage for black. And I'm afraid a move like king g7 might prove to be a tiny bit too slow. So rook to h4. Now in case of g5, the rook just goes back, it seems. Well, thinking of f6, but then the other rook gets to g3, guarding the g4 rook. And white is ready to capture on g5. Okay. And b5 eventually. So king g7. I mean, I don't know why would we actually need king g7? It's not like it's a bad move, but maybe black had to try to be a bit more a bit faster on a queen side. So rook h4, b5. On the other hand, it's still pretty awkward for white, right? The rook is still kind of stuck on h4. What they do, it's kind of you play g3 and then you bring the rook back to h2 by a second rank. Might be the case, but then once again, black can continue running forward. Or what's more likely, after rook h2, you do give this check so that the king gets to f2, and then you push it. So this rook is really terribly placed on the h-file. Yeah, it's 10 seconds increment, guys. Precisely, 25 minutes they had at the start of the game, plus 10 seconds increment. g3 now for white. Yeah, that's what I thought. g3 played. Now Peter has to speed up a little. I believe he still can't see it from this angle. Yeah, and once again, pardon for not keeping you guys updated with the clock situation. It was clear that Dubov played it that too fast, so we are not really talking about how much time he has. a5 indeed. Yeah, I think they follow the line that we've discussed. Yeah, and after rook h2, yes, I do believe it is important to give a check on c1. Let's see if Peter will end up doing this. You do give a check on c1. Force the king to block the second rook, the second rank, so the rook is still kind of stuck on h2, and then you do this. How does white stop this pawn at all? It's like you play g4 perhaps, and king to g3, maybe this is the way you're surviving, if you're surviving over there. It's like, at least, finally, manages to bring the rook to the, or rather, use the rook on a second rank. Are draw offers permitted or not? Well, there is no restriction over there in this tournament. Since it's a knockout, so, well, it's either game one and you know, then they can make a draw, and that was the case, for instance, in a classical game between Rajabov and Dubov, where a draw was agreed as early as move 12, but draws are not getting them anywhere, right? Because they'll have to play, well, in case of a tiebreak, they'll have to play a match with a shorter time control and short time control and so on and so on. So since there is a tiebreak system, since there is an elimination system, there is no restriction on draw offers. And then if one player is up in the match, then clear, I mean, it doesn't make sense to offer a draw. Where are we? Rook h2 was the last move, right? Seems that Peter is not sure if he's supposed to give this check. Well, the other thing could be, since we've figured out that g3, g4, g3, g4, and then king to g3 is potentially what white wants. Maybe black has to take care of this particular idea somehow. Not sure how you do it. It's like I was thinking of f5, but not the move you like to make, even though it does keep the rook sort of arrested on h2. Ah, yeah, but then white starts speculating on the rook straight. Like if you trade on e1, go b4, I'm not sure how to assess this one. I don't think black is winning. I mean, black has no difficulties achieving a draw, of course, but I don't think black is winning this one. So you need to keep the rooks, and therefore you probably just play b4 over there. So it might all break down. Look, black plays b4, trade happens. It might all break down to some situation where black will win back the exchange win back the rook for the b pawn and the bishop, and we will have the resulting endgame with 3 pawns for black, 2 pawns for white on the king side, which I want to say should be a draw. Of course, will depend on where the pieces are, but it's more likely to be a draw. So rook c1, king f2 on the board, yes. Well, I can see some lines suggested in the chat, but I've already sort of lost. Ah, well, this one. So g4, b3, king goes over there. And then there is a check. Yes, indeed, there is a check on g1, which forces white king to go to h4 or h3. But how do you make progress there? You want your bishop to do something else apart from guarding the b3 pawn, right? So it's like if you'd play e5 and be sure that white captures and bishop e6, that would be, strangely enough, it could be that black loses the pawn but improves his position, because he would later on still pick one of those weaknesses on g4 or e5, but e5, of course, white captures with the rook, so it doesn't make sense at all. Nevertheless, b4 is played. b4 is played. No hesitation before swapping the pawns. Apart from g4, king g3, which I agree doesn't look all that nice, it could be rook e1, it seems. Could be rook e1, and then black sooner or later will have to move the rook away. I mean, rook e1, that in case of rook c2, there is rook e2. Ah, guys, and that's the moment where you go b3. That's funny. That's the moment where you go b3, because if white trades, he doesn't have an access to h1 square, right? So rook e1 doesn't really help white great deal. Ah, well, but in case of rook e1, check on c2, then king g1 back is possible. Oh, really? Computer not finding win in this position is suspicious. You mean in the position after a takes, a takes? Yeah, because there is a feeling like all this stuff with bishop d5 and king g7 was tiny bit too slow. Oh, wow. g4 and an immediate g5 from Peter Swidler. Yeah, that's what you do. You want to create some weaknesses. I mean, you don't really care about number of pawns, right? Because later on you should be able to pick one of the g pawns. But you do want to create kind of a second weakness for black, for white. As black, you want to create a second weakness for white. One of white's weaknesses being black's passed b pawn. So you want to get to win one of those, and well, ideally both of those. All right, 4 minutes, it seems, for Peter Swidler. Four minutes for Peter Swidler in comfortable amount. I'm not really sure how much left for Dubov, but he doesn't seem to have any issues there. So g5 and fg5, kind of, I'm surprised. Why do you give the pawn? That's what Dubov says. fg5 played. So, king to g6. And we might have an interesting ending over there. So king g6, for instance. Let's imagine white goes rook e5, and something like that happens. b3. White has to go rook e1. And I'm wondering what's the assessment of this position, let's say. Because that's one dangerous pawn over there. It's one dangerous pawn, right? And if white somehow misplays it, like misses the bishop d3 threat, then black just plays bishop d3, b2, wins the game. So white will be forced to go rook b1 one day. This might be winning. I'm not sure. I mean, it's kind of you create the second passed pawn and then try to swap. I mean, try to go with the king to with the king over there, and then bishop guard the other pawn. Yeah, coming back to 20's move. Yeah, indeed. Queen g4 was a mistake, and queen e1 also. Yeah, that's right. Okay, let's update what's the real situation in the game. King g6 is played, indeed. Seems unwinnable for black. Well, not sure just yet. Honestly, from human standpoint, I would say, yeah, maybe once again, maybe white is holding, but that's a pretty tough task, in fact. I would see it as a pretty tough task because black's position is very, very stable. Black's position is very, very stable. White doesn't have like what you would call a real counterplay, right? Therefore, black can hover around for as long as he likes, and only, I mean, look for a particular moment to change the character of the position. Like over here, yeah, rook c2 kind of works, leads to what we were looking at, right? b3, and then white has to leave the g5 pawn. Otherwise, I mean, if you play, hang on, it all went back to rook e5. Yeah, so once again, a check here, trade on h2, play b3. If white forgets about the b pawn, goes king g3, then b2, bishop a2, or bishop e4, black wins. So after b3, white has to leave the g5 pawn. King g6, computer line all the way up to depth 36. Then it switched to b3. What's that? Shouldn't black put his rook behind the passer? Let's find out. Well, the problem is that black somehow needs to win back the g5 pawn. That's why I'm looking at those like rook c2 checks. b3 is still possible, of course. b3 threatening, well, in a way threatening b2 immediately, right? King g3, perhaps? Then check from c3. So now going back to f2 would lose, right? You go to h4. Well, rook c2 played. Rook c2 played. So he's going to he's going over there. Rook c2. If rook e2, yes, you still can play b3. It seems, right? Yes, so they are going towards the line that I've described. So the trade on h2 happens and black plays b3. White has to go back with the rook. White has to go back with the rook. Second rank or first rank, that is. Oh wait, this would be a mistake, in fact. Will it? Not really. No, never mind. Never mind, guys. I thought bishop f3 would be possible. Dubov did play rook e2, in fact. How do you win it? If you win it. You can get your second pawn to e4, it seems. Like go e5 right here, where the pawn is not possible to take once again because of b2. Rook e2, rook e1 was completely lost. Oh well, that's interesting. How was rook e1 losing? Interesting. Swidler winning, people claim. Let's find out. So rook e2, bishop c4. And then he's pushing the e pawn. Yeah, king g3. You put it on e4. Wow, that's nice. That's nice. King g3, e4. There is a check here, though. There is a check here. Oh, wait a sec. Oh, king f4. Yeah, king f4 loses to bishop d3. That's the trick. That's the trick. That's the position I wanted to achieve, in fact. So bishop d3 threatening bishop c2, it would seem. And in case of rook b2, bishop c2, that's an ironic setup that I wanted to show you guys there. The rook on b2 is kind of locked completely. So what white has to achieve is somehow to be able to give a check and put the rook behind the passed pawn. Okay. So e5, king g3, e4. That's the current position, right? Nobody's winning, I was told. It's a draw. Well, perhaps. But yeah, it's such a pity that I don't see. Well, it does seem that only 3 minutes left for Daniil Dubov. Anonymous giving 000 as the evaluation. Okay. But how do you do it? Once again, you do this, and then you don't play stupid rook b2. You go to h2. That's the way to do it, right? Or the way Daniil Dubov does it. That's nice. So he puts the rook on fourth rank immediately, which seems to be a terrible blunder because of b2. But in fact, b2 would be okay. It wouldn't really change the evaluation, but in this case, yeah, there is a check, king g5 and rook b6. The b2 pawn is gone. So b2, I was about to call the b2 a blunder, but not really, because if the position is drawn, it would be still a draw. And b2 played, check on d6. Suspect you take on g5. All right, it's kind of still a chance. Yeah, bishop e6, white captures there, you captures there. No, but not really. Maybe there is a chance. It's like you'll push those, you won't push them too far. I know, you give a check like this, f5. No, wait. And a draw was agreed while I was looking for further chances for Peter Swidler to play for Windsor. I'm afraid that's a very serious miss by Peter Swidler, and Dubov keeps entertaining us. Same as in the tiebreak against Rajabov, he gets in some suspicious positions, but manages to save thanks to perhaps great rapid playoff skills. And well, Peter perhaps has to blame no one else but himself. So once again, it was an entertaining game. Was somewhat misplayed by both players around move 20. Misplayed in terms of computer evaluation, of course. It would seem to be logical. Then a devilish trap indeed by Peter Swidler, which was recognized by Dubov on time, and he survives with the white pieces though. So in some 10 minutes there will be a second game where Peter Swidler will have white himself. He didn't manage to get anything substantial in a classical game out of his white pieces, but let's see how it goes for him in 25+10 rapid game. Stay tuned, guys. We'll be back after a short break. Welcome back, guys. And well, I hope you remember, I've promised you that I'll have some guests from time to time. It took us a long time, but we got our first guest. Yeah, Miss Eteri Koblashvili, the press officer of first leg of Grand Prix in Moscow, chess journalist, chess expert.
It was quite a long time ago, but still.
A chess expert empowered by the computer engine. So now any nonsense I'm saying on air will be immediately, put to test by Eteri's knowledge.
You can say nonsense, Zhenya. You are perfect. Actually, you're one of my favorite hosts, really.
Thanks very much. Let's not miss, the game has started, already few moves played.
What do we have here?
By the looks of it, the Kazbat. The Kazbat with exchange on d5.
Bishop b4.
And bishop g5, bishop b4, so forget about Kazbat, now we have the Rogozin d...
Like it was in the classical game, right? I mean, between these opponents. Or maybe I'm mistaken.
No, wait. Svitladubov. What was Svitladubov's second game?
I think it was Rogozin.
Oh, well, cool. So that means you're following games better than I do.
But of course, I can make mistakes, Zhenya.
Wait a sec. What was the... No, there was e4, e5.
No. Yes,
it was the Rosalima
right.
line, yeah.
Yes.
We had one Rogozin defense played. It was in the first game between, or the second game between Navarra and Grishuk. Yeah, second game between Navarra and Grishuk was the Rogozin defense.
Of course, I mix things. And now we can see Daniil Dubov in his very fashionable outfit.
Which says Dubov, no?
Yes.
But he had the hoodie which...
Now he has Balenciaga. I think he switches from Dubov to Balenciaga. But still he looks like very stylish.
The important difference though, it's not really a Rogozin defense because the knight is not yet on f3. So that would be, once again, that would be a proper Rogozin. Knight, it's white to move. Knight f3. I have to unclick something so it will allow me to analyze. Bishop to b4, bishop g5, then black plays a move. Takes on d5, bishop g5. So the knight is on f3, and then black would play h6, for instance, to make it somewhat similar to our position. Here white goes e3, h6. So the difference being that later on, maybe white will be able to play bishop d3 and put the knight on e2, guarding the knight on c3. So it's sort of more flexible for white.
And is it possible to play on the king side for white in this position? I mean, f3, g4, all chicken nonsense.
No. Sometimes they do it. I mean, first we'll have to wait for this position to, to sort of stabilize and so on. But yes, let's say if black doesn't do anything crazy but opts for some sort of a queen's gambit setup, right?
Right.
Then indeed that's the plan white usually is going for. f3 and tries to play for e4 or g4. Right. So that is possible. Yeah.
Let's see what Peter will opt for in this position.
One of the things to do is just to trade on f6.
And
that's like to exchange there and then to play queen b3, for instance, which would practically force black to trade himself, to trade on. But those are known to be very, very solid for black.
Yes, it looks...
well, he has already played a couple of moves. So he went for bishop to h4, g5, bishop g3, and knight goes to e4. Very aggressive. And I keep saying this, Dubov, he keeps impressing everyone with how aggressive, how creative he is.
New ideas always.
Everywhere.
g5, h5, and
g5 being his favorite move. Yeah, g5 being his favorite move, absolutely.
So...
Okay, and I'm trying to follow the discussion in the chat that, people saying that Peter will finish him, meaning Dubov, I believe, will finish him off.
No.
Not so hasty, guys.
And now are we going to play queen b3 or queen c2?
Queen c2. He ended up playing. Not sure why he preferred over queen b3. So what to do for black? Something like bishop f5.
Bishop
Could be a move.
D3, maybe.
Yeah, we
Bishop
need to play
D3.
bishop d3.
Take.
Yeah, we can take over there. Swap on d3. Those positions, like those are the positions where g5 actually kind of backfires, right? Because that's a hole on
Because h6 is too weak, no?
Yeah, h6 is weak, and the pawn on the square on a5. No, look, queen c2, h5. Wants to trap
As we said already.
But wait a sec. But I do know this one. This one is it's a transposition. If I'll track a bit back, I mean, I'll be able to show where it comes from. Typically, it's the Nimzo Indian defense with queen c2, where black goes. Wait a sec. Black goes d5. I'm guessing. Say, swap happens. This h6. G5, knight e4, e3,
right.
h5. Yeah, so,
yes,
it is possible to get via this moves order. And then white plays bishop d3. If I remember correctly, black goes h4. You do this.
f6.
Black plays f6. White captures on e4. And goes d5. That's the only way to save the piece.
So
because if you take the bishop, there is a check from a4. Yeah.
Jenny, you know so much about chess theory.
Not really. Oh, stop
really?
it. So bishop takes, queen d5. That's how the line goes. Bishop takes f6, black castles short.
Well, it looks very sharp.
Bishop goes back. Yeah, it indeed is very sharp because it's like black castled into the side where he has basically no pawns to cover the king. At the same time, white still has difficulties developing, so that might be very, very sharp. And
Dubov would be happy to get this position.
Absolutely. And by the look of things, I'm guessing Peter doesn't really know this line.
Or maybe doesn't remember.
Or maybe doesn't remember this line. No, it's just that he's not a Nimzo Indian player himself, so he doesn't know this.
Player, yeah.
He doesn't know this from the black side. He does play d4 from time to time, as in this game. Well, it actually started with one c4, but still. Yeah. So.
Are there any other lines?
Yeah, people in the chat say f3 is
F3?
playable. Yeah, indeed it is.
What about h4? Is it possible? No, I mean instead of f3. But okay, let's see it later.
For white, yeah, it's like if you move the h pawn, yeah, this one is really painful. You don't want black
will be very weak.
Capture this. Yeah, that's actually a very popular, or rather, very often occurring motif that. Instead of swapping on g3 immediately, which allows white to take with the h-pawn, first you go h5, you threaten to trap the bishop, and in many positions it would be the only reaction white actually has, to move the h-pawn, not for the bishop not to be trapped, and then you capture on g3 happily and destroy his pawn structure, precisely. So, we have, what do we have? h5, and Peter Swidler's thinking.
How much time?
Does he have? He spent about 5 minutes, I believe.
19 minutes at the moment, if I'm right.
Dubov barely spent any. 25 minutes, 33 seconds. Once again, we are not sure how accurate is the time display.
Still, maybe f3 is possible if you don't want to get into such business against Dubov. Maybe f3 is the most solid way in this position.
Yeah, f3, and then I'm wondering what black does.
Takes?
Because, yeah, I mean, he can capture on g3. He might as well consider... Is this one a move? Because that's funny. I mean, if you take the knight and make a silly move here,
right?
Might as well just resign after rook h2, right?
Immediately.
Because takes, and you can't stop the pawn. Yeah.
Queen h7. Sorry.
Which one? Here.
Here. Ah, no. Of course. Sorry, I'm being
taking
stupid.
the knight.
Yes,
yeah, I
yes,
mean,
yes.
it's like.
No.
An
of
attempt
course
for a perpetual, but there is bishop f8. Yes.
Yes, sure.
So queen h7 doesn't really work. Yeah, f3, h4. You probably should try for bishop e5, then take over there, and it's such a mess in the center, so it's really hard to say, I mean, what this position is going to be.
Really?
By the looks of it, it should favor white, it seems, because black weakened his king so much. White still can castle long. That's a great kind of thing to have over there, because white is unlikely to castle short in this position. It's too slow to develop both guys. Yeah, so castling long, yeah, this should be good for white.
So Peter has made a move.
He has made a move. Let's find out. F3. F3 played.
Right. So actually he's thinking about what Dubov has on his sleeve at this position, you know, because you can expect anything from this young player, and he proved it many times that he's capable of creating things.
And you never know. That the interesting thing is, like, you never know if he has it like well analyzed till move 20 or just bluffs at the board, because he was the one himself who told me that was the World Cup 2017 in Tbilisi,
yes.
right? It was in Tbilisi. Yeah, the Olympiad was held in Batumi next year, but the World Cup itself was in Tbilisi. And he won seemingly a brilliant game in the Sicilian, very sharp game against Vlad Artemiev. But it turns out that the idea of a sacrifice, the peace sacrifice he made, was a total bluff, and it was a refutation. And he said, we kept blitzing out, and then I thought, okay, that's a nice move, let's play it. So even in a classical game at very high stakes. So what he ends up doing here seems to be reasonable. So first trade on c3, then captures the bishop, goes queen d6, and I believe I've seen this position as well.
And what's the move here?
What's the move? King f2, I suppose, right? Yeah.
King f2.
And perfect timing for queen d6 as well, because if you play any sort of developing move, then, say bishop e6, yeah, then white is on time to achieve the very harmonious setup with bishop d3 and then knight e2, right, guarding the g3 pawn.
Yes.
So now, after queen d6, if you put the knight on e2, it's in the way of the f1 bishop. So really a perfect timing for queen d6.
So now he can play king f2 or immediately knight e2, but king f2 is more preferable,
it's
right?
Of more flexible, yeah.
Yes, because now you can move your bishop.
I'm considering this, to be honest.
And
point being,
we're not afraid of check, of course.
Yeah, check we are kind of fine with. We will trade the queens. Black will be forced to go h4, and sooner or later we will undermine this pawn. Yeah?
Yes.
So bishop d3, knight e2, then g3 later on. This feels comfortable for white.
Yes.
But I suppose black would play h4 immediately. Yeah. So Peter went for king to f2. Dubov replies with knight c6. I'm wondering what computer evaluation of this position would be. Do we have now for a change? We have an oh well, computer claims it
+1.
Computer, well, not very deep computer, let's say, a non-line engine, claims it to be very, very nice for white.
Very nice for white, and rook b1 happens to be the first line in this position, according to this engine, at least.
Seriously, rook b1.
This engine likes it. Rook b1. So he
trying to slow down black's development over here. Yeah.
b6 will be weakening, of course.
No, but b6 maybe is the move he will end up playing. Yeah, it's just that with moves like g5 and h5 being played, you don't want to castle short, right?
Of course.
So you will end up castling long sooner or later, and then
I wouldn't be happy
b6,
to have castle long as well.
You know, I mean, it's like, in order to castle long with b6 already being played, you would probably have to put the bishop on b7, but then it's a very stupid bishop.
Yes.
It will make your king safe, yeah,
it is
when you castle.
By d5.
Yeah, it will make your king safe when you castle and move king b8, but other than that, it will be a really stupid piece. So ideally, I believe black would prefer to somehow ignore the threat to b7 pawn.
Daniil would like to play h4, as we know.
H4, no, I'm guessing he might be looking at stuff like bishop e6 and hoping that if white captures on b7, he'll win a tempo or something. b6 played, nevertheless. Who won the last game? Nobody won the last game. It was a draw, and I have to say...
The super final? Or
no, not
here.
the last game. Yeah, the previous game of the tiebreak. And
yes, sure.
I have to say that perhaps I've overestimated this position when I claimed that it had to be like winning for Swidler mathematically. We had a discussion on Skype with one of the friends, and he said, well, perhaps you're like overestimating the chances. Computer never gave anything decisive for Peter. It was an advantage, of course, and particularly from practical standpoint, it was very hard for Dubov to fight back. But he really defended it nicely.
And now we have b6, c4.
c4. So Peter is not looking for any kind of monkey business. So immediately, c4. Good.
I think now it's time for Dubov to think.
What's going on with the... So c4, how to react to this?
Actually, it's not very pleasant
to
have such a position with black in rapid against the 8-time Russian champion.
Yeah, precisely. Look, and now even this bishop b7 tends to be... Yeah, well, he ends up taking on c4, which obviously not the move you are happy to make, because you help white to develop the bishop, kind of with the tempo, yeah? I'm guessing the problem with bishop b7 was one of the problems, that white could actually capture and play rook b5.
Oh.
And then possibly even take this pawn on g5 if... it's like you don't play queen d8 in such position.
It looks ugly.
Yeah, and if
like
you
Magnus
move
would
anywhere else, then just take the pawn. Then play your bishop d3 or bishop c4, knight e2. And
this looks absolutely hopeless.
Yeah, absolutely. So he had to take... Bishop takes c4, and then once again, it's a very, very bad position from the looks of it, because now bishop b7 leaves the f5 square at white's disposal, so white can play queen f5, stopping castle long, attacking f7 pawn, attacking g5 pawn, so it's like everything falls apart.
Yes.
And bishop d7 played instead.
Bishop g...
Yeah,
so
that
now
makes much more sense.
b6 looks out of case, no?
Yeah,
you wanted to play bishop b7, now you have to play bishop d7.
Yeah. But is there a way for white to really punish black, like stop castling long?
Stop castling long, bishop
check
a6?
On e4?
Or is it too slow?
Check on e4. Bishop a6, yeah.
I think it's too
probably
slow,
a bit too slow, yeah?
Yes.
Even though, how to react to that?
h4, of course.
No castle short just yet, h5 is hanging. Yeah, h4 is possible, but then let's assume I'm continuing to develop. Because as long as black is unable to castle, as long as the king is in the center, I'm not afraid of opening the files. Yeah.
No.
h3 I'll probably take.
Not.
Yeah. Knight b4 is not there because of a check on e4, attacking the king and as well as the rook on a8.
So Peter has made a move,
which is knight e2. So decided not to stop.
Positionally
not to stop the
developing his pieces.
And
if I castle.
You probably should.
I take on f7, right? Or is it too scary to open up this
yeah, maybe
file?
that's a bit too much.
Too much.
Once again, it's one of the moves that the engine might suggest and might even get away with that, you know.
But from the human point of view...
Yeah, you would rather prefer to attack the opponent's king and not grab this pawn.
But how? So. How would you attack?
How would you attack? Maybe move the
horse?
B5? The horse, like c3 and then b5 or e4. Castle long played.
Castle long.
Yeah. Knight, wait a sec. So now the digital board is somewhat behind, so I have to input those manually. Knight e2, castle long.
Of course, computer wants to take on f7.
Compy wants to take on f7.
As
That's
you said,
by far the best move, yeah?
As you said, it's scary.
Chat, yeah, now a little correction. We do have an engine now. We from time to time we do cheat. We look at the online engine, which is very weak. And supposedly we are better.
We can do better than us, but still.
we can do better than the engine. But yeah, the whole point of having human commentary, otherwise you could just sit at home and look at what your engine suggests, is to provide you with what grandmasters are thinking about. Yeah, and really, bishop f7 without providing any numbers, yeah, we do understand it's a good move, which leads to a much better position for white. But
just take a pawn which is hanging
yep.
and unprotected. So,
but
take on h5.
Take the other one.
Yeah, why not?
Then
Bishop f5. Are we afraid of it?
Bishop f5. We are.
We are.
We are afraid of it. Bishop f5, some knight e5. Well, I don't know. No,
only,
knight e5.
only bishop g4.
It is.
Bishop,
we
no.
have bishop g4. Do we?
Or maybe not.
But that's ugly, yeah? Bishop g4, he's going to take the bishop.
I take and...
We trade, we take on g4. We are 2 pawns up, but we have three stupid pawns on the g file.
And king
yeah?
is very vulnerable in this position.
Okay, bishop f7 played. I don't care how dangerous it is, says Peter.
And he played h4.
And h5, h4 was played.
And now, are we going to play?
Now let's see. I mean, if he's scared. I claimed this one to be scary. I claimed this one to be scary for white. Peter, is he scared really? Well, h4. Well, that's the problem because once again we've already mentioned that Dubov how aggressive he is, how creative he is. You don't want to give the guy this type of a game when he understands it's all in. So basically, he doesn't have to look for any other moves but attacking moves. If the attack fails, he's lost, right? So he's in a way he's in his element playing this.
Yes, but still we know that. For example, in the Isle of Man, Daniil Dubov didn't show great performance, so it happens that this strategy fails.
Fails him from time to time,
yes,
yeah, absolutely.
So
you can't be like absolutely
always.
stable with such type of chess,
yes,
right?
Sure.
You can be brilliant and kind of mediocre at times when you're playing in such a sharp fashion.
And as we all know, that Mikhail Tal, whose birthday could have been yesterday, so he played an aggressive and very style with many sacrifices, but it was the shortest period of time when he was the world champion. So
no, we can go further on Mikhail Tal because he had later on in his career, it's like 80s, I believe, like early 80s, when he had this streak of almost 80 games without a single loss. And his style, you can imagine, evolved quite a bit from those careless sacrifices here and there. And when he was asked by a journalist, I mean, what do you think? I mean, which Tal is better? This Tal, it's kind of mature Tal who possibly lost a bit of, of this spirit, but matured, or Tal world champion 1961, and then he said, I would destroy him. I would destroy this young guy. So, we'll see where Dubov's going to be in 10 years.
Yes.
Okay, so still no reply to h4, it seems. Yep. So this gentleman over here, he is scared. As I said, bishop f7 is a scary move.
Right, of course. But he should have thought about h4, of course.
Yeah, it's one of the...
these guys, they see everything, almost.
Almost everything.
So now g4 is not good because of rook f8 first, and take on g4, right?
Rook f8 first, then he moves the bishop, black captures on g4.
g4. So he can just wait or make some useful move, maybe take his...
Trade? I mean, well, I always want to trade queens.
Yes.
I don't know.
Maybe
I'm too old. No, not only with Dubov, especially with Dubov, but it's like trade the queens.
Especially when you have an extra pawn.
The more we swap, the less we blunder. That has to be the motto for this kind of games.
Yes, I understand you quite perfectly, because I also like to...
No, but seriously though, look, if white plays something slow, say the bishop on f7 runs into rook f8, so let's move the bishop back, yeah? And
Right.
then he might be getting into some sort of a tactic like this. And who knows what is it? I mean, meaning if you take the knight, then it's a check, and it's so awkward. And I'm not necessarily saying that it works for black,
Sure,
but
sure.
it looks terrible. I mean, you go to f1, then I don't know what happens. Maybe he trades. Maybe he does like
And if I
attacks
go to
the
E2?
knight. Yeah, you don't want to go to E2 because of something. A check from E8. You'll still be forced to F1. Yeah.
No,
you want to put the knight on E4.
Of course, I want to
That's
defend
fair point.
my king.
Fair point. King E2. The move I was not looking at, but might work. Yeah, you're right.
But
You're
maybe
right.
not, because there is bishop also.
So black does this. If knight E4, then black might consider capturing there.
Yes, scary.
That's dangerous.
So he took.
It is scary, yeah.
He took on
H4,
H4.
G takes H4. Black, of course, recaptures, so it's in a way postponing the decision. Peter decided to swap on H4, but now he has to...
And now,
still-
as you
Queen
suggested,
G6.
yes.
Yeah, brilliant. Get rid of those queens.
And black is going to put it somewhere.
Queen E7,
Queen
I'm
E7.
guessing. Yeah, you don't trade.
Queen F8, no?
Queen F8.
Threatening rook H6?
Cool.
Or maybe
Queen
not, of course.
F8 with some rook H6 ideas.
But maybe
And
it's
if
too
bishop
passive.
moves, then bishop F... no, wait. Bishop F5 is not yet a threat, so I'm moving all the way back to B3, and after bishop F5, I'm
You just
actually
take on
taking the knight. Yeah, there is the
C6.
knight in C6. No, that's perhaps... No, it's kind of Queen E7 looks a bit more to the point, because
Yes,
we want to put
yes.
the rook from D8 to F8.
It's just like a coffee house trick, you know this?
Queen F8 with rook H6.
Of course. Like you used to play in the park.
Two,
No,
two moves in a row. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's like Queen F8. If I'm allowed to
Castle.
make a second move in a row, then it works. Switzerland on 9 minutes, they say. So this move better work. You mean Queen G6, Lorinda, right? Queen to F8, bravo. So at least we have one qualified commentator who is guessing the right moves.
I'm just guessing the
And it's not
strategy,
me.
you know?
It's not me.
To out-trick your opponent by any way.
Queen F8. Speaking of possible exchanges, bishop E6 immediately, perhaps?
Bishop E6 immediately,
So
why
at
not?
least, yeah, at least kind of to... Because seriously, I come to realize that your rook H6 is actually a decent move over here. Rook H6, and then try to drive the queen all the way back, and maybe later on to go for bishop F5. So in fact, I'm strongly considering trying to swap the bishops, even
Yes.
though black will still win some tempi on this queen on G6, like going rook H6,
Take
after
with a
this
check.
capture, take on D7, bishop E6 played, by the way, take on D7, then who knows? It does seem to be solid enough for white. Yeah,
You
those
can
pawns.
play on G4, maybe?
Could play on G4, right? Pinning the
Maybe,
rook.
maybe
Yeah,
not.
that's annoying for black, I believe. Okay, but it didn't happen in the game. So let's go back to reality. Bishop E6, knight to E7, swap on D7 happened. So essentially, instead of rook H6, black played knight E7. And,
Knight E7.
Same thing. So now,
We
queen
should take.
G4 would allow rook G8. Oops, now, why do I keep putting this thing on G7? That's so silly. Queen to E4, yes. Threaten mate in one.
E4.
Checkmate in one.
Centralizing.
Threatening checkmate in one. Never been a bad idea.
Yes.
Queen A8 checkmate. Which would allow some funny lines like knight D5, knight C3, for instance. Whenever you take, it's a checkmate on A8.
And do you have something
Well,
to...
over there, I'm afraid black is already busted. So, I mean, he will have to guard the D5 knight, where white swaps on D5 and feels more than okay. So, and I'm taking a peek at computer evaluation. It does seem to be like really good for white. Knight D5, by the way, being the best move, according to machine. What's wrong with my knight C3 then?
Knight C3. I don't know.
Once again, let's count them pawns. White's pawn up, right?
Maybe because of Queen G8. Maybe
you mean-
something, but
This, Queen G8, and if I take... I mean, if you recapture on d5, it's not the reason for me to be unhappy. So I suspect it has something to do with this.
No,
but I don't really believe it works.
No,
yeah?
I think I should
I'm
take
running
on,
here and to d3.
I think I should take on d5,
On d5
with the rook. Or with
rook
king.
d5, yeah, rook d5. But then rook h4 is there.
Rook
It's be 2 pawns,
h4.
right?
It will be 2 pawns, right.
So you can swap, go rook g5, attacking both g2, attacking both
a2?
g2 and a2. Yeah, the queen g8 is actually a sneaky move, going, well, attacking the a2 pawn. So that's not so simple. Okay, let's see. So knight d5 played.
Knight d5 played, and Peter has 7 minutes.
Wait a sec, can he try to capture this one immediately?
Immediately, why not?
Second pawn, you know. And what does black do in this case? Rook g8?
He just should invent some tricks.
Or trade again. Yeah, it's no longer about like the position being acceptable for black objectively, right? It's like how many tricks he can create. So people claim knight c3 would have been answered with queen d8. Yeah, you're right, perhaps. But I just thought that that's kind of good enough for white. Being a pawn up in the... Well, it's not an endgame just yet, but very close to be called an endgame. Maybe you're right. Maybe it's not that easy to win, because after all, black will have much safer king after king b8, yeah? Okay, so what has happened? Knight c3 was not played. So, knight f4 was played.
Knight
so
f4.
In a way, similar thing. It's just that he's getting some extra options of getting this knight to g6, e5, for instance, which wouldn't be available from c3.
So he wants to make a fork, and I think that...
He wants to capture the knight on d5 at first place, yeah?
I think that queen g8 is the option here as well. And
queen to
queen
a3. Oh, well.
Well, Dubov looks disappointed, you know, and
queen
such moves
to a3,
can be
attacking
approved to
a2,
it.
so that if you capture here, it's a check from a2, and
King
then
somewhere?
takes on d5. So white has to be a bit more careful.
Sure.
And in case of my knight c3, by the way, queen a3 would have been would have not been possible, because look.
Why not?
Knight c3, queen a3, rook b3, and the a2 pawn is still protected. Okay, I mean it would be possible, but it would not lead anywhere.
So knight f5 is a mistake, no?
I don't know. Knight f4.
Knight f4, yes.
Not really. White is still better according to the machine. Rook to c1 played by Peter Swidler. Makes perfect sense once again.
So you should take, I think.
Take on a2.
When you're given such a chance, just take everything.
Take everything. Rook c2, I suspect, right?
Right.
And then queen moves to
b3
b3 or e5. Well, b3 kind of feels nicer. Well, once again, annoying for white. Well, some...
Am I going to play rook hc1? Or is it too dangerous?
You might.
No, I think
no.
no.
It's nice.
It's not.
It's nice. Okay, c1, and... Feeling it that sooner or later black has to give up the pawn. So it has to go to b8, let's say, and everything is getting simplified. Like take with the queen, trade here, take on c7, and who knows what's the resulting endgame is.
Rook endgame is usually a very tricky one.
But two rooks, you know, passed pawns for both sides. Once again, it does look like white has to be very close to win. Same I was saying about Peter's position in the previous game. Like it does look like he's winning, but he ended up not winning this one. So
well,
queen
as we
a3,
know,
rook
it's very
bc1.
hard to win a winning position. So
Yeah, that's truth universally acknowledged. Yeah. King to b8 immediately.
As you said.
But that's much more precise. Once again, what we were doing, we were taking this one, which was just like a tempo loss. Because after what we were doing, we were taking there, rook c2, moving the queen to b3, and over here we were taking on d5 with the queen. But Dubov says, no, I'll play king b8, so now if you want to take on d5, this is the moment I'm capturing the pawn and then just going to take on d5.
Yes, and now we have the
And
material equality at least.
Nothing for white at all, it seems.
And now he can take on h4? h4 maybe, but
which moment?
no, I mean here, but...
Well, he does. He does have this option.
He has, but still these three pawns are quite...
I
don't like them, really.
Yeah, but which one to choose for... Black can't actually trade the queens. I thought queen e4, but then you take on h8 with a check.
Yes.
Yeah,
so you just take on h4?
So we are about to see this position, I believe.
Really?
So knight d5 played. What else black can do? What else black can do? Oh, no, wait a sec. There is rook d5.
Rook d5?
There's rook d5, so that if you take with the queen, there is queen b2 check. And that might be a very serious difference, because, once again, I was looking at the computer lines at some point, and computer was suggesting rook to e1 in this position.
Rook to e1?
Yeah, and I thought, well, rook to e1 just looks better, right? I mean, rook is more active and stuff.
So
no, we are going to see this.
We
are reaching this position with queen d5, and Peter is about to take the pawn on h4.
Really?
And what's the evaluation here? Well, it does seem to be still favorable for white. Well, +1, which is no mystery here. +1 means an extra pawn for white. But now it gets really, really tricky, because now black might start running with his pawn as well, and it's not the number of pawns which counts. Yep.
But the swiftness of them.
Yep. Queen back to e4, an attempt to swap the queens. And perhaps white will succeed in it, but who knows? I mean, what's that? Who's running faster? Well, central pawns are typically more important, right? But it's black who has two connected passed pawns in this case. A and B technically.
I don't like such pawns, you know. When you play against them, it's usually when you are in trouble.
Yeah, well, the point was that it's like 10 moves ago maybe, or it looked like Peter was much better for free, so for like no counterplay for black. Some tricks like attack this, attack that, but no real counterplay. This one, even if computer says white is better, it's... You know, it's a...
Oh, Dubov didn't like to change the queens.
Yeah, so he keeps the queens on the board.
Yes, but as you say, it's just a top-level chess. You always get something, no? So...
Queen to c6.
Queen to c6.
But now white manages to, you know, to activate his forces, and... I don't like queen g8. I don't like queen g8, yeah, because pawns are no longer running anywhere.
So you go with just g4?
Yeah, that's the question. You can play f4 as well. You can play f4. Depends on what pawn you want to move forward. You might as well say that I'm not moving my pawns forward just yet. I go king g1. Not that I really like this move. I think white has to move either g4 or f4. Do we have the... so, queen g8 hated by computer. Interesting.
No, because this position without queens would be more drawish, as you showed.
Fair point in the chat. Whose pawn's going to run faster, or who's going to run faster? Dubov, because he's younger. Really. Okay, so queen g8. Well, if we take a pick at computer evaluation, queen g8, then queen c6 is also something computer doesn't quite like, because it claims f4 immediately.
Just not to waste time on this maneuvering.
Queen c6 was not to the point. Even though to a human eye it would seem a logical follow-up. Now perhaps after f4 or g4, black gets to... No, he doesn't get anything. I thought he gets to play rook g6, but c7 is still hanging.
He can play maybe queen b3?
Oh, you mean this, but...
okay,
then g5. I'm guessing if white gets something like that, that he's free to trade the queens anytime.
Sure.
Because pawns are kind of too far advanced. Okay, let's see. g4 played.
G4 played.
On the board.
Well, it's very human to push your pawns.
Yeah, you have the passed
the
pawn,
opposite
push
side
it
of the
forward.
board.
Push it forward. No mystery here.
What does have black?
Queen h7, something?
Queen h7.
Queen h8.
Queen
okay.
h8.
Queen h8.
Ah.
Wants a check. And the point perhaps being that in case of king g3, he wants to double on the h file.
Right.
Because after queen h7, I was thinking a move like king g3 or possibly king g2, like kind of guarding all the squares, right? So now after queen h8,
If I go king to e2,
yeah, you can
opposite side.
probably try to bring it towards the d3 square or something. That actually makes a lot of sense. It might be safer over there next to your other pieces, and it will be very, very useful in case of an endgame, right? Stopping the pawns. So king e2, king g3 played by Swidler.
King g3.
King g3 played by Swidler. King e2 we were thinking wasn't a bad move at all. So rook h7, of course.
Dublin.
Now let's see what Peter is going to do after that.
But now I don't like this position really. Not because just I think that now it's not very much won, you know? Not absolutely
Scary?
won. Scary.
Scary.
The king is just in.
Well, let's see. I mean, how serious the threats are.
How serious?
If he pass, let's say we do this. How do you checkmate the king? You give a check. King has to go to f4, it seems.
Yes.
Because over there, I mean, we are not getting a what? What? G5.
G5. It's not only a pass, it's just move forward. So as you
Yes.
wanted to play slowly.
What's going on at all? So check here. I don't like G5. I'm sorry, but I don't like what he has done to his position, Peter Swidler, that is. So G5.
And if I check?
Well, you should. Yeah, and I'm not sure where the king is going. Rook h3 played. King to f4.
And if I check with the queen?
Depends
no.
on what square we are talking about, because queen f8, I suspect, well, the whole point of g5 is that you have queen f6, right? So queen f8 is not an option. You do have a check from h4, in which case, where the king is going? I mean, f5 seemingly being the only square.
And do I check on h7 or where?
Check from h7.
And you cannot play queen g6?
I can't do...
You just have to go back?
I don't know what I'm supposed to do, to be honest. Does seem to be like a perpetual already.
Yes.
Does seem to be like a perpetual already after king f4. Not to, yeah, well, it's really weird, this g4, g5 thing.
And only 3 minutes left for Swidler in this position.
3 minutes for Dubov, it's still 10 or?
And 16.
16 minutes for Dubov. So you see how this young guy plays. I mean, everything forward, doesn't matter the material, attack the king, and yeah, and if Peter will, you know, spend more time and end up not going for the perpetual, he might lose as well. Once again, blowing away a very, very good position, favorable position for himself. So he will have to start over if it's a draw. He will have to start over with 10 plus 10 games.
But now it's time for Dubov to think, because he should choose the best check in this position.
Ah, so really? Is it like... I thought it's like queen h4 is good enough for a draw. There's also rook h4.
Rook h4
now I'm understanding
as well.
that rook h4, it's like... do you have the courage to go to f5?
No,
I'm not sure.
I don't have, but maybe Swidler has.
Maybe Swidler has.
But
because king g3, rook h3 is just an obvious repetition,
sure.
right? So after rook h4, king f5?
Well, it's
maybe?
very scary.
Wow. So dangerous, it seems. Check from h7.
Queen c8 as well. We
Queen
also
c8
have
as
such
well,
things.
Yeah. Queen c8, if the queen... No, queen c8, maybe I still have this.
And then I go to f8. trying to check as much as possible.
You could start, well, the feeling is like with king being on a 5th rank, with still queens and rooks being on the board, that there should be a perpetual, that maybe there is no checkmate, because a lot of squares around this king are defended, but at the very least there should be a perpetual. So coming back over there, king e2 would still seem to be good enough. King e2, king d3.
Yes, to hide the king from these pieces.
Okay, so people say rook h4, rook h4.
Rook h4, really?
Rook h4. Honestly, I don't see what's wrong with queen h4, to be honest. I mean, this and check from h7 might be something, but I'm not. Well,
I don't have.
G6, like you never play in a practical game, even though it might be the myth that the engine says.
Especially in the FIDE Grand Prix.
What's wrong with FIDE Grand Prix? I mean,
no, I mean in such a high level. You would never play like this.
Let's see, because we do have this position on the board. King is on f5, queen h7 played. So what do we have? Back to f4 still. It doesn't seem that black has anything better but the perpetual, right? So there is still an option of going back to f4, coming to e5.
e5.
Queen e7,
Queen
right?
e7.
Queen e7, and once again at the very. Now what do we do?
If I go back to f4.
Back to f4, so no check from h4, but there is a check from h4 with the rook.
And now go to f5.
And now we have to go to f5. But
and now I have queen g6.
Oh, in
because
this case
the
we
f3
have
is not
queen
hanging.
g6. But isn't it still some sort of a perpetual?
Yes,
Probably
sure.
it is.
It is.
Probably it is. It's really hard to believe. So, king f5 and queen h7 played. King e5, people say. The g6, we said you never play it in the Grand Prix.
Oh my God. Well, g6...
Isn't it like minus from now on?
It's
or even a
too risky, too risky.
Let's see, queen to
actually,
e7.
computer likes it.
Queen e7.
As strange as that may seem.
It's like, are those guys just being brilliant? Wait a sec.
What?
Is it ever possible that we win some sort of such endgame? Not really, because a-pawn... Because, I say, if white pawns would be a bit further advanced, it could be, you know, that all of a sudden white is winning this kind of endgame. But not here.
Not here.
Not here. Yeah, the a-pawn is running also quite fast. But something to keep in mind. Something to keep in mind. So after queen e7, what do we do? Now, people,
I cannot guess any move.
People suggest queen e6, but I suppose it's not here, right? Because here queen e6 would lose to many moves. To rook f3, to rook h5.
No, doesn't seem to be like
rook
this.
g2, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, well, that makes perfect sense.
And if I make a check on h5?
Check on h5, king f4, I'm guessing. Because king g4 leads to checkmate in one move. So not that many options. So we go to f4, and
looks like we have to make a check again on h4.
Check on h4 with no, check on h4 with the rook. Then I'm running away. It seems. King g3 and hide on f2 after queen g5.
And if I check with the queen?
So you can give a check with the queen, where white is limited to only one option, which is rook g4. Then you have a check from here, and if I want to play for...
No, you just go king e4.
Yeah, I go to e4 in this case.
And then that's all. No checks anymore.
So I'm told that after rook g2, that's a draw. And a chance for a win, believe it or not, was to play f3, f4.
And he played f4.
So what has happened in the actual game was rook g2, black captures on e3, so black kind of plays sort of all in himself.
All in, yes.
And then
my God.
f4. f4.
f4 is winning, actually.
Instead... Oh, really?
Yes. In this position, it does. but I don't know how.
So rook g2, queen takes e7. I was told that after queen e7, g7 was winning.
G7 instead of
Yeah.
what? Just...
I'm not sure. I mean, it's too confusing, honestly. It's too confusing. So after queen e3, f4, let's stay with the game. Because even this...
S4 is more than okay here.
f4 is more than okay.
Sure, because...
White is winning, because it's confirmed by computer.
Do you see any more checks? Of course, you just go to f6 and you...
With the king?
Yes.
You pretend it's an endgame. You pretend the queens are not there. Yeah? You just push your pawns forward. Help with the king.
But now what's your next move for black?
A check, this way or another. Rook
Which
h5.
one?
Rook h5, for instance.
So
H5.
I just go rook g5?
In this
Or not?
case...
Yes,
well,
of course, because
you
I cannot...
can't go to f6.
You will take
You
more
can't
pawns.
go to g4 because it's a checkmate from h3.
Yes,
so you do go rook g5.
I go rook g5. And if you go to h3, I go to f6 and no more checks.
Yep.
And if you take, I also take with the king or with the pawn.
Oh, if you capture, well, perhaps it doesn't matter. You probably take with the king.
Maybe perpetual here with the king, no?
Like from g3 and then h3.
Still I have this f6 square.
Yeah, you probably should go forward and somehow, it's not the quantity, but, you know. Well, so I'm getting some messages about what was the truth in this position. And it turns out that it actually was a critical position, which it was very tough to navigate in the rapid, because it does seem that queen f8 over here was
Queen
the only
F8.
move. Would you believe it?
Oh my God.
And queen e3 does lose to f4. So now, at least...
Now we will see how
according to
will it
what
lose. Yes.
according to what we know, yeah. According to what we know, Peter Swidler has a winning position with how much time on his clock? Can you
I think
please?
he has 1 minute.
Can you please check?
1 minute and a half.
So 1.5 minutes. Dubov is still on 10 minutes, but this
But now
might be too late.
Thinking on his survival, but what was there after Queen F8?
So instead of queen
in the
F2
line,
yeah,
as you
I'm
showed.
not sure. Yeah, well, that's what I was told, that queen f8 was the only way to make a draw, it seems.
So perpetual again.
Somehow, yeah.
Because you cannot play Queen F6, maybe.
So if you...
Because of rook takes F3.
yeah, rook f3, sorry.
Yes, but
yeah,
you
no
have
queen
to
f6.
move
Yeah,
your king.
you probably go to g4 and some queen c8. Maybe that's the line, you know. Maybe that's the line.
Some perpetual. And now f4 helps a lot because you don't have many squares for black.
Again, so rook h5, we are forced to play rook g5. If queen d3, we probably put the queen on e4, right? Because those endgames have to be winning. And after queen h3, for instance, we go to f6, no more checks. The feeling is like whenever black runs out of checks, he's lost, right?
Yes, of course.
So he has to look for those perpetuals this way or not. One more time. So if this check played, rook to g5, and then
You
trade
take?
over here, and we said after king takes, there will be a check from g3. But
If I take with the pawn?
is this one better? Because there are still there are still checks, right? Or it's not so easy, yeah?
It's not so easy.
Because queen d3 allows for queen e4, queen h3, in this case, king goes to f6. And then somewhere like, you should continue checking, right?
You go to
Gets
g7,
to e7
here.
maybe, and then you put queen to f6, and there will be a safe place for the king.
Yes, so maybe it's better to take with the pawn.
Maybe, yeah, it could be. But first, black has to go
make
for
a
this
move.
line.
So maybe rook h4 is possible.
Rook h4 to...
Just to take on
yeah.
f4.
Rook h4 to attack this one. White doesn't have checks himself. Well, how crazy would it be to suggest g7? Okay, not to play g7, but to suggest g7. Because, funny enough, I'm not sure if there is any... well, there is a check on d3. I thought that that's like some picturesque position was king being on g6 and not a single check. But there is always one square that you that you miss. There is queen g6 check.
Yes. And if I protect the pawn by playing queen e4 after rook h4.
Yeah, you probably play queen e4,
So it's the
and
most
after this
solid
check,
way.
you still go to f6.
f6.
Right. And black can win the pawn back by doing this, but he probably resigns sooner or later after g7. And somehow white should be able to push this pawn last square forward.
Sure.
Last square forward.
So Daniil is about to make a move now.
Not really, he's still thinking.
He raised his hand, but he didn't make a move.
Chat is discussing the possibility for Swidler to qualify. Not really. Tell us why queen takes d4 is not playable. We don't know ourselves. Let's find out together. Is it the case where g7 finally works?
Rook h5. What do I have?
h5. I thought we attacked the rook this way or another. Maybe king g6. Yeah.
King g6.
King g6. Yeah, perhaps g7 is the rook h4. Your move.
Really?
Daniil Dubov ends up playing. Yeah.
As we saw that queen e4 is quite good.
Queen
Do
e4,
we have any other options in this position?
My silly g7, which doesn't work, it seems.
g7 is very
that's
risky.
too much. That's too much because.
But still, he has...
Is it too much though? Queen d3. No, well, of
Queen
course
e4.
you play queen e4. Yeah, of course you play queen e4. Queen e4 is on the board. So we might want to take a closer look at this queen h3, king f6, rook takes f4 line, because that's very likely.
It will happen.
Yeah, very likely the line black has to go for.
So rook h5 immediately is not good. So he played.
He does play queen h3.
Queen
yes.
h3.
Maybe king e5 is an alternative. Maybe king e5 is an alternative. But then some rook h8 might happen. No, you probably go to f6, my feeling is. King f6, yeah.
Yes, right. You know him better.
So king f6.
And you told about rook takes f4.
Rook takes f4, queen f4,
Forced?
queen g2, g7, and it might be important that in this line, once again, I have to double check because I might be missing something. Oops, everything's destroyed by the, so takes over here, g7, and after queen d5, as well as queen c6, king e7 and no checks. And then queen f8 and g8. Same in case of queen d5, king e7,
King d7
and no checks. And
is very strong.
Here I'm not so sure, because those sometimes are positions that are not that easy to win. Because whenever you start, like you control g8, that's the moment you're not threatening anything. Oh wait, queen g3, that's kind of some, no, then you start checking. Then you start checking, it might get a bit annoying.
Queen e5.
Queen e5, he goes to g2, still controls this and stops the pawn. And then maybe you have to come back. There'll still be the game. There'll still be the game. But Dubov doesn't do this. He plays queen d7, so he wants his queen on the board. Does g7 win? We'll find out right now, because Peter has played this move. g7. So
Check.
what's in case of a check from h6?
From h6, rook g6? Or how?
Rook h6.
Looks to be the only way.
Rook h6. Rook g6. And then, I don't know, check from d6. You finally have your king g5 and yeah, what? So it's got to be a perpetual check right now. If there is a perpetual check right now, then queen d7 no good, queen c8 was a draw, they say. So they kind of both blunder. Computer says blunder, Swidler wins. King to what?
King to f5.
Queen d6 check
f5.
was played. Queen d6 check was played. Fair point, because now you kind of have to go back. King F5. Who's winning now? I mean,
Imagine how nervous they are at the moment.
of course they are.
It's impossible even to look at this, but they're playing.
But now, no, King G5, there is still a check from D8.
Yeah.
Is there Queen E6? Well, he goes to F6, that'll be... If he goes to
Perpetual?
F6, that'll be a perpetual, yeah.
My God. And yes, he played back to F5.
G7, so check here to F5, check from D7 again. Once again, Queen E6. What's Black supposed to do after Queen E6? Obviously, Rook F4 doesn't work. We just take and promote ourselves the new queen.
Yes. So what's here? Yes, they shook hands.
They've just agreed
my
to draw.
God.
So
Another nervous
very,
draw.
very tense game, of course, with a lot of mistakes, a lot of possibilities. And was it finally winning after... Could you please check? I mean, of course, yeah, people were right to stop, asking to stop the evaluations, but I'm really wondering what was the final moment where Swidler missed the winning chance.
King F6.
King F6 was already not good. After Queen H3 check,
Yes, but
King G5 would have won.
King G5.
King G5 would have won.
Who could have
because
imagined?
after this check and this move, perhaps the rook on H5...
Is misplaced.
Oh, well, it doesn't attack F4, as simple as that, yeah?
Oh,
So he would have some move. It's so tough to navigate. It's so tough to navigate such games. And sorry, guys, sorry that we could not provide you the proper evaluations. It was really one roller coaster of a game. But you can imagine what was running through players' heads.
but
yeah?
you see, it's always with Dubov like this.
It's always like
You
this
remember
with Dubov.
Rajabov's games against him, and that's why we love chess.
Yeah, Rajabov was... well, it felt like in a few games Rajabov was completely winning, but nothing happened.
Yes, like in the final game where there was a draw.
Yeah, precisely. So I believe that makes this match even more entertaining. So a quick break, after which 2 games with shorter time control, 10 plus 10, will be played. So at the very least, we'll see 2 more games with these brilliant players involved. And maybe in this shorter rapid, this tiebreak will be resolved. Stay tuned, guys. We'll be back shortly.
Thank you very much.
Now I have the pleasure to present the Consul General of the United States of America, Mr. Darian Akins. It's a pleasure to have you here at the FIDE Grand Prix in Hamburg. Today, you opened the game between Daniel Dubov and Peter Swidler ceremonially. How did it feel for you to open this game?
That was very exciting for me. It's the first time that I've ever done the first move. So it was very enjoyable, and to see this competition come together and see these two kind of fight it out. I know that this is a tiebreaker game, so it was very interesting to be able to do that.
And afterwards, you stayed for more than 20 minutes, I think, and you watched the game. You followed the game, so you know the rules, you followed the moves, and you understood what is going on.
Yes, and I became very enthralled. My intent was, okay, I'll stay for a little bit, but the more the game went on, the more interesting the players became and the moves that they were making. So I continued to watch until it got to the point where I thought I understood which player would ultimately prevail.
So give us a guess. Who do you think will win the first game?
I shouldn't say that. But I think that one player at this moment has the upper hand.
You mean the player with the black pieces, I think. Yeah, we talked about it. So,
well, I don't think it's fair to judge it before the outcome, but I think that at this moment, yes, there's one player who has the upper hand.
Mr. Akins, thank you a lot for coming here, passing by, and be our guest. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me. Yep.
Welcome back, guys. As you can see, the second game, the first game with the second time control for today with 10 plus 10, a shorter rapid has started. Once again, Peter Swidler has the white color against Daniil Dubov. So just quickly,
and you see the ready opening, am I right?
Well, it started as the ready opening with knight f3, d5, g3, but Dubov went for, quite an annoying setup with second move g6, which doesn't give white that much of a liberty, because if you continue in the fashion of ready opening, that's what happened for another one move. And then if you castle, you might as well end up being worse after e5, because black builds a very strong center and has no worries whatsoever. And if you play d4, guess what? It's a symmetrical Grunwald, which Peter played a lot with black, which is one of the most drawish lines ever. Pardon me, with all pieces on the board, it's a bit silly to say so, but it's one of the most drawish lines ever. Knight to f6, castles, castles, bishop e3 is one tricky move. I've seen it for the first time played by Levon Aronian.
Where? And when?
In some, in between games friendly blitzes. Point being to play queen c1, rook d1, and then bishop h6 or c4 with queen on c1. So it's a weird setup in a way. Maybe the main point of bishop e3 is kind of stopping c5, because white's going to take and never give this pawn back. But
sure.
Really, those of you guys in the chat who's screaming that it's a draw, well, not draw just yet, but it's such a solid setup from black side. So
maybe they need this setup after previous games, not just to,
there was
to calm down.
2 crazy games before that. h2, h3, rook e8. Well, Dubov is preparing e7, e5. So a bit worrisome fact that Swidler is thinking with white over his move 8.
Oh. So he's preparing e5?
Yeah, he wants to play e5, and if black gets to play e5, say in case of a c3, e5 and everything's... it's not how chess works, yeah? Bishop d4, say back to e8. Black might as well be just slightly better in this position.
Yes.
Might be slightly better.
But still, we expect aggressive ways from Daniil Dubov. We're used to it.
What white is supposed to do, I'm not sure really. Knight e5 would kind of solve the issue of black playing e7, e5 in a radical way. But then I suspect black trades and goes to e4. And, well,
now you have to defend e5.
Yeah, might be some difficulties defending e5. This might get pretty sharp, though, in this case. Honestly, I'm not sure if there is a way to defend e5. So not sure, really. I mean, if you don't stop e5, seems like a slightly worse position for white, or at least white is not fighting for an advantage. But if you do, then it doesn't work tactically. So this bishop e3, h3 is just like an experimental stuff. And the time control might not be short enough for experimental openings. Yeah, it's always...
It's not blitz, of course.
Honestly, that's 10 plus 10 is perhaps the trickiest time control, because you practically never have it. So you do have the rapids, and the rapids are typically played with either 25 plus 10 or 15 plus 10. And you have 2 very common controls for the blitz. It's 3 plus 2, the one that the World Championship is played with, so 3 minutes plus 2 seconds increment. And there are tournaments where this 5 plus 3, the longer blitz, is played. And 10 plus 10 is something in between. So you can't really allow yourself to think for too long, but at the same time, you can't really do... Okay, so bishop e3 to f4, and then after knight h5, bishop to g5. No, knight f6 was not played. That's nonsense, yeah. Bishop g5, so Dubov is thinking. He is able, it seems, to play e5 if he starts with h7, h6.
If he plays h6, we go to h4 or e3 or,
h4 or
c1.
G5.
Yes,
will be caught
yes.
there. So maybe we just go back to h6. Now we figure out where the bishop's going. Now we'll figure out where the bishop is going.
e3 back or c1? Or where?
Well, honestly, not sure. Well, it does make sense to provoke h6. So, say, in the lines like this, after the trade, the pawn would be hanging in some lines. I mean,
Yes.
it's not like you want to take the pawn on h6 right here because b2 is hanging. But it will be hanging in some lines. So it does make sense to provoke h6. But still, it doesn't look like white is fighting for an advantage. In a way, he'd be like kind of couple of moves behind after making all this, you know, all those moves with the bishop. So bishop went to e3, f4, g5, and then might go either to e3 back or all the way back to c1, as Peter Swidler ends up doing. Bishop to c1.
Well,
Look.
this opening is quite a rare one, as it may seem.
Imagine this symmetrical setup with rook on f8, knight on f6, knight on b1. So it looks like it was symmetrical, then black has played rook to e8, knight to c6, and knight f6 to h5. 3 moves in a row, and he's once again to move. Isn't it amazing? So white has lost 4 tempi in the opening. 4 tempi, guys. Yeah, like basically moving the bishop 3 times, then return back to c1. However, it's not that clear because not all of them are good. And then Dubov kind of accepts this by going, wait a sec, going back to f6. Yeah, so knight goes back to f6. Swidler plays knight bd2.
bd2. So either he wants to play c4 or e4 in perspective.
Wants to
of
develop
what?
his horse.
Pieces.
Horse to d2. And then perhaps the black is ready to play e5. So still, it's like if the position would be... wait a sec. We are able to illustrate that. Knight c3, and then some stupid moves.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, it's still... would be the position with black to move. Now, what we have, colors reversed, and it's...
also black to move.
It's black to move, but black pretends to be white. So once again, I'm not sure where it's heading, but it looks like still Swidler lost too many tempi to make up for this.
Well.
So it can't be a good position for white. Don't play this line, kids.
Well, what's the reason for this choice, you know? It happens sometimes, even on top level.
What's the reason to play bishop e3? Nerves. Nerves, yeah, well, it's like you know if you go for c4, it's basically offering a draw with white.
Mm-hmm. So
right.
he wanted
c4,
to
c6, all that. I
invent.
mean, takes, knight e5, and then I believe the most comfortable way to make a draw is knight g4. And there is still nothing wrong with, how is that, knight f to d7, the good old move, no, e6 followed by knight f d7, yeah. The one that Karpov Kasparov played. This, and then knight d7, and then it would be f4 and knight c6, and so on. Right. So bishop e3, you think, okay, let's get something original, let's get something playable, and then you come to regret it just 5 moves later because it's maybe it is original, but it's not very attractive. Knight bd2, e5, d takes e5, and in a way, if black simply recaptures on e5. Exchanges everything.
Yes,
yeah, you probably take. You go knight f3. Yeah, and it would be, in a way, it would be easier for Swidler to play because it is a Grunfeld setup on the board after all. So he's,
but
well,
still
not
he has
really.
to move his bishop again.
Yeah. So what Dubov ends up doing is he's playing knight e4
Knight
first.
e4.
Knight e4
sharper,
first.
of course. If
so
I go
you probably don't want to take. You probably don't want to take because the knight will find it really awkward to move. In case of knight d2, black of course plays e3, destroying the structure.
Right.
And then some positions like that, they are so ugly.
No, it's not very good. So you have to play knight b3 here, or what?
So after knight e4, yeah, you might end up playing knight b3, or you might say, I'm planning to wait. Yes, so I'm waiting for you to take on e5, so that I can...
Take?
Now I'm probably swapping. Okay, let's imagine I want to make a draw. I'm swapping here. If black takes, I'm taking on e5. And I'm fine, it seems, right?
Yes.
Because if black takes with the bishop, then after a queen swap, white even gets to win the pawn on h6.
Yes.
If black, wait a sec, how is that? Yeah, if black first trades the queens himself, then once again the h6 pawn is hanging. So
Yes, you cannot take with the
yeah,
rook.
so c3 actually makes sense. Peter takes another twist on this idea, going c4.
c4.
When knight d2 was played pretty quickly, now he seemingly can capture back with the knight.
With the queen, maybe.
Queen takes.
Is it possible?
Queen takes is possible, but then
Take on
what do we do? Yeah, after that one, do we get the c4 pawn back?
Queen c2? Or what?
Queen c2.
No, it looks ugly.
It's like, at the very least, black takes on e5 and does okay. And maybe he'll be able to play even a as crazy-looking move as b5 is, and then, you know, there'll be bishop f5 with the tempo, some knight b4s. So this looks dangerous. So I would probably consider taking this one with the knight, so at least the c4 pawn is protected.
Yes.
But now I realize that... no, queen takes. Okay, we'll find out.
Queen
now I
takes.
realize that the problem with knight d2 was d4 move.
Ah,
D4 move, because now if you just let black take the pawn back, like the pawn on e5, black is just better. If you play f4, black might be seriously better. He's pawn down, but, you know, f6, let's say this, and...
this a3 square looks dangerous.
Looks really dangerous. So queen d2 played,
Queen
dc4, and queen c3. Not queen c2, but queen c3. I don't know why it makes it... I mean, what makes it different, but queen c3, so possibly he's planning to try to protect the e5 pawn, or it is protected, yeah, in case of bishop e6, for instance.
It is.
Black is no longer threatening to capture
And in these
e5.
lines, as you showed, b5, a4, there is no bishop f5 in this position.
So after b5, you probably play a4.
A4.
Right, there is no knight b4 with the tempo, there is no
Right.
bishop f5.
But maybe there is knight takes
e5
e5.
I can capture,
You
and
can.
in case of queen knight f3 check and discover the
you
attack on the
take with
queen,
the
there
queen?
is queen f3. Yeah, white is very
Yes.
happy in this case. So after queen c3, b5 perhaps is too much, so bishop e6 or a
Bishop
capture on
e6.
e5. Bishop e6.
Yes. Bishop e6.
Bishop e6. Now,
So are we going to move this bishop again?
well, sooner or later. Yeah.
Maybe that's the
So
moment
bishop,
to do it.
Bishop f4 or
Bishop f4, bishop
f4 might
e3
be,
again.
you know, knowing what Daniel Dubov's favorite
move,
is,
yeah, it
which
will
is
be
g6,
g5
g5.
immediately.
Yeah. You might as well consider going h4 first after bishop e6. What's that? Bishop
yes.
e6. I mean,
And now-
it seems slowish, but I'm trying to kind of make sure that e5 pawn is protected. Yeah. h4 and then bishop f4 next move, if there is a next move for white. Once again, it might be that white is not on time. Bishop e3, second try. Bishop c1 to e3, we've seen it some time ago. Was move 6, now 10 moves later, bishop c1 to e3.
The postman always calls twice,
Yep,
as we know.
precisely. Queen to e7, yeah, well, reminded me of the movie, yeah.
Yeah, so what are going next?
Queen e7, rook d8. I'm not sure what Dubov is doing. Yeah, well, basically both do reasonable stuff, bringing rooks to the center. It's just that if you think of in terms of like pawns majorities here and there, I would say that black's is much more threatening potentially. So if black gets to play b5 finally, which he might, after having moved the rook from a8, so nothing goes on this diagonal when you play b5. Yeah, so b5 and then potentially b4, black actually gets something rolling. White is sort of stuck. White would really like to play f2, f4 if this move would be, you know, if it would be a legal move to play f2, f4 to support the e5 pawn. But
Yes, b5, a3, a5 is not very pleasant, for sure. Oh, a3, is it necessary to play like this? But I guess so.
yeah, you mean after b5? Yeah,
After
probably he
b5.
has to play a3.
Or maybe there is some
b5
knight g5 move or what? If he plays b5 immediately.
Wait, first of all, it's white to move, yeah? So we might as well pretend that we are clever. We play a2, a3 first. Then he say goes not b6, but b5 nevertheless.
And you play somewhere
Knight g5, e5's hanging, yeah? So knight g5 he cannot take.
And there is a pin, not very pleasant. Yes, you're right.
No. Rook a to c1.
A to c1.
Okay. Still, I don't see the reason for black not to play b7, b5. Oh, well, after ac1, there might as well be some knight b4.
Oh.
Wait a sec. AC1 is on the board. This one I can see from a camera view. Yeah.
So
then some knight b4, opting at knight takes a2 as well as knight d5.
Queen a3 maybe.
Queen a3, possibly after a swap on d8, because an immediate queen a3 allows for this, and knight c2. That's what I thought. But then you trade the queens as well.
I take, and I
and you
even take on a7.
You might as well take on a7.
Even if I'm very insolent. You know?
I agree. So, b7, b5, the first idea that we've discussed. Yes, you have the majority. Once again, you have the passed pawns, you move them forward. You have the majority, you want to move them forward.
So now you have to play a3, or what? a3, a5, right?
-1, yeah.
-1.
People start providing us affiliation. -1 after b7, b5. Yeah, I can think of this. It's not only that the position is -1. It's like, for instance, this crazy game before we had, right? I mean, the previous game. It was clear that Swidler is winning in some case, but at least Dubov's play, in some way, was... it was understandable what to do. You give as many checks as possible. You're looking for a perpetual check.
You have one way
Here,
to defend.
Who would tell me what white actually has to do in this position? It's like
clear plan.
No plan, precisely. I mean, you do play a3 to stop b4. That's what he ended up doing. Bishop d5, and then it already feels that this pawn on d4 has gone.
And it was played, really.
Or the pawn on e5 is gone. Yeah, bishop d5's played. Yeah. Has played something, queen to c2.
Queen c2.
Now, at the very least, black can capture and take on e5. Or take on e5 at once.
Here you can take on a7.
a7, yeah. So we prefer this.
Yes.
And take on e5 with the knight, yeah? He can still take on a7 and probably will.
To take with queen, no? Oh, no, sorry. The knight is hanging, yes.
Yeah. I mean, might be still possible to do, but it does look terrible.
With check.
c5,
yes.
you play c5 in this one. Or maybe, wait, let's make it a bit more precise. You trade there first.
Trade first and go
You go c5. The bishop is almost trapped. After bishop b6, I don't know, maybe there is a way to trap the bishop. I'm not interested in it. I'm just going bishop d4 and queen e2 next move.
That's just
terrible.
Hopeless.
That's terrible position for white.
Yes,
That's a terrible position for white.
Is there any cure from this?
Not sure. I mean, at first place, black has to decide what he's doing. Bishop f3 being, of course, a very, very sensible move.
Daniil made a move and it was
a7, a6. A little bit of greed there. No, not willing to part with his a7
He's just showing
pawn.
that his position is so much better that he can even play
Yeah, he'll
a6.
play a6. And the plan is to grab the e5 pawn one move later.
Give me your answer on this.
Yeah, precisely. And there might be no answer. From the looks of it, there might be no answer in this position for white.
A4?
Clearly. A4, but what does it do in terms of...
Not really.
Still, yeah, well, he's going to take on f3, take on e5. Yeah, so that's the main concern now, that black's going to take on f3 and then take knight e5.
And Daniil also is better on time. He has
more time on the clock. Yeah, but
yes.
that's we kind of got used to this one already.
So...
Rook, knight d4, people say? Bishop to f4 and back to e3, right. It's kind of... bishop f4 played, by the way.
Bishop f4.
Before. Is there any kind of a point to it, if black just reacts with g5?
I go back.
Wait, maybe
E4.
there is a trick. Knight takes g5 and then bishop d5. So wait. Bishop f4. So in case of g5, I suspect, once again, not checking with any kind of engine, knight to g5. Well, actually, queen h7 is only one check, but let's forget about this. Yeah, takes on d5, rook d5. That would lead to some complex stuff, yeah? So black gets a pair of minor pieces for the rook, but the bishop on g7 is really silly. White all of a sudden looks pretty much in the game. Yeah, I'm not sure if he is not worse, but I mean, at least getting some play, which Swidler lacks in the game. So bishop f3, bishop f3, and knight d4 was played.
Knight d4.
Yeah, queen e4. Now a trade on f3 would more or less leave black with an extra pawn. Maybe there is a better move. Is there a 5?
Knight b3? No.
Is there a 5? Is there a...
f5.
I mean, technically f5 is possible. I don't know if it makes black's position better.
Oh, he just took an e4.
Why not?
Why not? Yes.
Why not? Bishop e5.
And if I take on h6?
Then probably just knight f3 and b2. And that's b2 is the pawn you don't want to lose, right?
Right.
Bishop h6 and then...
He
so Swidler swaps on e5.
Now he's suffering in the endgame without a pawn.
But that's like absolutely hopeless, it seems, no? Bishop e5, you can capture over there. Black has to trade. That's the moment you take on f3, then you take on d1, then you take... So efficiently, it's like 2 pawns up, because white's 4 versus 3 doesn't do a thing. Yeah?
Yes, he's changing. Now the rook endgame without a pawn.
People say Tubov playing edge in first choices. Yeah, we did reach this endgame, and king f1 is perhaps the only way to stay in the business, hoping to get his rook
now if I play c5 before, is it a plan, or should I push the king here?
Probably you need the king
centralize
at some
the
point.
king to e6, for example, or where?
I'm actually thinking of
king g7.
Well, he just played king g7, isn't it?
King g7.
G7, okay.
Well, it's very unpleasant.
So that's his plan. After rook d7, he's going to go rook c5 and then play c3, getting 2 connected passed pawns. So therefore, rook d8, white needs to attack the a6 pawn, not the c7 pawn. Because now at least white is on time, right? Rook a6, rook a8, and in case of c3, white at least has the chance to swap and take on a6, which might still be like not ideal, but at least white stays in the game.
And if you play...
He's not forced, of course. Dubov's not forced to play rook c5, and I believe he already did something else.
a5.
Well, that's painful, because now he's about to just a second. Rook is on d8. This software today.
You're playing a5.
A5.
And there is no rook a8.
The idea is to put this one here, then the rook on c5, then still go c3. So it's like all the pawns would be protecting.
A suffocating maneuvering.
No, that's really, really...
and if I... okay.
That's one of those positions where it's really hard to which are really hard to misplay. So f4, rook to c5, and Peter plays king e2. But how do you survive this one?
I don't know.
Takes a4. Okay.
You can see from Peter's expression that he's on the verge
visibly unhappy.
Of despair.
So there should be tons of ways how black is winning here. Okay, one of the seemingly practical choices would be to go c6.
c6.
Yeah. What I want 2 connected passed pawns. So in case of rook a8, I'm going rook a3. Rook a5 loses to rook a4. I don't believe... there is nothing to calculate, right?
Yes.
There's nothing to calculate. I mean, you trade, you eye in a square of this pawn, but you won't be able to take it. Yeah.
Lost, just lost.
But Dubov decides to capture
take
on
on A4. Rook
so that
D4.
after rook d4, will we see some miraculous escape here?
A3 or what?
Hard to imagine, of course, but who knows? I mean, that's the kind of first step in wrong direction, this BA4.
Really?
I don't really... I mean...
No, they're not connected, right?
Should be completely winning, but it's like if you get to connected passed pawn, you're allowed to stop thinking. I mean, you're literally, you just move them forward and they win by themselves. While here, A3, check on C2, King E3, and the pawn on A2 is there. Rook takes A5. There is another pawn.
C5 immediately, or what?
I'm guessing so. King F6. He says, Dubov says, I need the king as well. You probably play G4.
You can't go King D3, so...
King D3, he's gonna capture this one. Yeah, you probably try to imitate some sort of a counterplay here. King E6. It's still dead lost, of course, yeah. But at least you try to.
But sometimes miracle happens in this...
In rook endgames especially,
yes.
Yeah. But this might be not the one where the miracle is bound to happen. The problem with those 4 versus 3, that they still don't create a passed pawn, you know. So not much to do for Swidler, it seems, and then he'll be in this situation, in the must-win situation with Black.
Now he is going to create some passed pawn himself, but how to do it?
No, he can't.
No way.
I mean, that's the problem. It's the problem. There is no way whatsoever.
And if I start with H5 or F5?
Yeah, H5 black takes, yeah?
Just takes.
So what he does, he goes F5, black takes over there. You probably have to play this.
Yes, why not?
And then what?
H5?
No. He decided he had enough.
Yes,
he decided he had enough. So
Peter
F5,
Swidler loses.
GF5, and Peter Swidler has a lost game 1 with 10+10, which makes it very, very hard for him to come back.
And Dubov now just needs a draw.
Yeah.
With white.
And then, coming back to this, pessimist-optimist approach, coming back to this glass half full, half empty. Different chess players have different opinions on what awaits for you after, say, a series of draws where your positions were better, like in this tiebreak. So Peter had two times. Very attractive, I don't know if winning, but, certainly winning a second game. Very attractive positions. Didn't win both of them. And some people in this situation, they would think, okay, but I'm getting the guy, so I'm very close, and the next game I'm going to win.
That's optimistic.
But knowing Peter, I'm afraid he was kicking himself for not winning, particularly this game too, which was clear he was winning. So.
And some people think that they had their limit of luck. So now the black stripe will begin.
Yeah. So like he was getting lucky in order to get those positions, those attractive positions,
and
he didn't use it.
Did manage to win.
Yeah, he didn't use it, and now, yeah. Okay, so. Thanks for joining me, Eteri. Eteri said she has to go after game 1 of 10+10. So the second game, guys, you'll have to watch me alone. Pardon for that. Thanks once again for joining. You're welcome anytime. So maybe during the final, always a pleasure. Yes,
thank you very much, Evgeny. Thank you very much for those who invited me here, and good luck to you, and have a nice evening.
Yeah, thanks again.
By the way, a huge football match is going on at the moment, Liverpool against Man United, so...
Okay, so that's why you leave. That's why.
Not really, but I would like to see the result at least.
Okay, so thanks very much. Type in the chat what's the situation right now in the football match, and I'll be back in some 5 minutes for a second game where, to remind you, Peter Swidler will have to win with the black pieces in order to keep this tiebreak going. Stay tuned.
Thank you.
Welcome back, guys. Players are getting ready for a shorter rapid 10+10. We had to let Terry go. So last words he said, she has confused indeed Man United with Man City. We do know that Liverpool is leading 2-0. And yeah, those who were wondering what's the origin of the girls, you call her the girl. The girl's name, Terry's name, originates from Georgia, precisely. Not Georgia the state, but Georgia country. The reminder of the score in this tiebreak: Daniil Dubov wins first game in 10+10 rapid with the black pieces, really in a mysterious game, being particularly mysterious for Peter Swidler's opening play, basically losing 4 tempi with the bishop just to move it back to c1. So that was inexplicable. Those of you who are following the previous 2 games might agree that it's all nerves, because yeah, Peter, of course, had 2 very promising at some point. I believe in game 2, we are safe to say, winning position. Then, you know, now, of course, it will be a really, really tough task for him. So having the black pieces, he needs to win in order to keep the match going. I don't know what his opening choice is going to be. He seems to be struggling against Dubov in terms of getting a playable position. Well, people say, Lorinda, so believe that it was Swidler's first loss in 19 games. Well, unless we talk Fischer Random, I believe he did lose the game in Fischer Random match beginning of September. Or we are talking after that. I know, then he lost at the World Cup, obviously, so maybe after that. So a Dutch defense, d4, f5, g3. The Leningrad Dutch from the, once again, same as in Navara Vitugov, the man from St. Petersburg, former Leningrad, is going for a Leningrad Dutch. And the question would be if the similarities end here. To remind you, well, Vitugov was not successful. Fourth knight d2 is not the most common move, but understandable. White is looking for e to e4. Causes Swidler to think on move 4. Typically you want to stop e2, e4 in the Dutch, but then if you end up playing d7, d5, it's kind of a mixture of 2 things, because Black would be playing a mixture of so-called Stonewall Dutch and the Leningrad Dutch, the Fianchetto Dutch with bishop on g7, while for White, knight is not necessarily misplaced on d2. That's the current position here. And if you play bishop g7, then White apparently just plays e4. Pretty much like in the previous game. Tupov is very, very straightforward, right? The Leningrad Dutch is the Stonewall kite. Not really. So this one with g7, g6, bishop g7, and then later on an attempt to play d6 and e5. That's what we are referring to as the Stonewall, well, the Leningrad Dutch, pardon. While Stonewall would be this, later on d5, later on c6, develop the bishop on d6, and so on. That would be so-called Stonewall. So after knight d2, Swidler ended up playing bishop g7, and we've got few moves played pretty quickly. So e4, full exchange on e4, d7, d5, bishop back to g2. Knight to c6, playing to try to seize an initiative, so attacking the d4 pawn. I suspect after c2, c3, Black will, especially knowing the situation in the match, Black will play e7, e5, which is a pawn sacrifice. Knight to e5. And then opting for if white captures on d5, then, you know, queen e7 perhaps, develop the bishop, go for a long castle, try to mess up the position. You don't really care about objective valuation one more time. I mean, you need to win with black at any cost. So it's the moment where you actually stop caring about what the position is, as long as it is not dead equal. So c3, e5 played, indeed. White captured, knight takes e5 is already on the board. And now, not that white has any sensible way of not accepting the sacrifice. Because knight f3 is, knight f3 played. I was to claim that it's certainly awkward because of bishop g4 pin. But might not be such because of a check, right? It's like it would be certainly awkward if white forgets, what he's doing, castle short, then black castle short, and this pin is really annoying. But perhaps in case of bishop g4, white still has this check. And I'm not sure what's happening there. I mean, bishop d7, white might as well just go back to d1, because bishop is not really better placed on d7 than it is on c8. You might want to say there is like b5 and c6. Is there? Oh, well, there might be. Because f3 knight is hanging, yes, so white has to go queen e2, but then black seemingly wins after castle short. Once again, the knight on f3 is attacked, and bishop f4 is, well, supposed to be losing. I'm guessing this is good enough. Just trade everything, go g5, win a piece. Yeah, so I do expect Swidler to try bishop g4 at least. Because, if you trade one more pair of minor pieces, basically ending up capturing on f3, or then it's... he actually didn't play it. He went for knight c4. Which is playable, but it kind of lets white to, at least to castle short. So that's... makes white's life certainly much easier. Yeah, but I would try bishop g4. So one more time, if you are to check bishop g4, castle, a check here, and really b5. Can this work? Oops, no, not queen a5, of course. Check here, c7, c6, seemingly no other moves but queen e2, and then castle short. It does seem to be the option. Yeah, queen a5, b5, queen a4, b5 lost. Oh, well, thanks. So it was the best try, bishop g4. Okay, let's stay with the game. So knight c4 played, both castled short. And b2, b3 was played. Knight went to b6. Bishop g5, yeah, that kind of allows white to finish the development at the very least. Queen to d6, you want to keep the g7 bishop. Then yeah, but then rook c1, and similarly no issues. Here, well, Peter ends up with this knight on b6 being seriously misplaced. Bishop g4 h3, you're absolutely right. Bishop g4 h2, h3. But then what you do, you probably take here, you give a check on e7. You're right, guys, there's nothing. I was hoping to take on f3 and castle long, and to claim that it will be opposite castles, right? Implying that white's going to castle short. But white's going to castle long himself, and the position gets fairly simplified. You're right. You're right. So probably there was not much. Could have been something still. Okay, so while in the game, rook e1 threatening bishop e7. So Dubov doesn't know what does it mean playing for a draw, right? But I like the move though. It makes it really awkward for black to respond. because bishop e6 runs into knight d4 seemingly. And other than that, how do you protect against bishop e7? Well, and if we are back to discuss the so-called Leningrad Dutch, I'm afraid it's not that type of a position that we would be referring to the Leningrad Dutch. So once again, it was an attempt to play the Leningrad Dutch if white would behave accordingly. Because something like this is basically a starting position. That's one that we've seen in the game between Navarre and Vitigov. So white goes knight to c3, and then black has a variety of options. That would be more or less like a starting position for advanced theory of Leningrad Dutch. Like c7, c6 is the move that was played by strong players there. Queen e8 obviously is the move preparing e7, e5, and then knight c6, the move Nikita Vitigov himself played against David Navarre. Without success, but at least he managed to get some fight on the board. Our position, it's some weird mixture of things. Bishop takes c3, a desperate try to complicate matters. So Swidler takes the pawn. After bishop e7, I'm not even sure where he's planning to go. Queen to d7. Okay. Bishop to f8, what's the plan? You absolutely can't take on a1. That'd be just a lost position, right? The bishop f8. I suspect he's planning to take with the king first. Yeah, bishop f8 played, and I suspect he's taking the other rook. Okay, that makes sense, but I was still skeptical about this position. White takes on e1. Now you're forced to capture on f8 and some sort of queen e5. Black is a pawn up, but his pieces are, half of them, not developed at all. The rook on a8, the bishop on c8, the knight on b6, sort of misplaced, yeah? And a lot of stuff is going around the king side, like white brings the rook there on e1. I mean, objectively, white has to be close to winning. Computer gives bishop f4, bishop e7. Wait a sec, how is that? Bishop f4, bishop e7, queen c6. How was it? That was not... Queen to d4 played by Daniil Dubov instead of capturing the bishop, which might as well just refute the whole thing, because the bishop on e1 is hanging. Yeah, well, it does seem to be a winning move. It does seem to be a winning move. Well, brilliant find. Queen d4, and I don't know if Swidler just resigned over there, or a draw was... I mean, I need to wait for the confirmation on the result, because I don't really think if you find queen d4 with white, you offer a draw, but... +6 now, yeah, queen d4 is really, really nice move, and yes, Daniil Dubov wins the second game and thus the tiebreak against Peter Swidler. White, he has put the second king. Is it a... Well, that's confusing. That's confusing. He wins, and people say it's absolutely winning. People say it's absolutely winning position, which it does look like, but it's a draw according to chess24. Draw. Well, let me double check on this. Let me double check on this. It is a draw. Yeah, it is a draw in the position where computer gives +6 to white. Indeed, let's once again look at black's options. Queen d4 was played with a kind draw offer, meaning like you accept the draw, you surrender the match. But is there any move for black? Black might have... That's why I'm so confused, because if there wouldn't be a draw offer, and we are, if anything, we are not having the audio from the playing hall. You might as well resign with black, because your only move seems to be bishop to a5. You can never ever capture this guy, right? Because queen h8, king e7, king f7, knight g5, king e7, check on e1. I mean, that's just horrifying. Anyway, so there was a draw, which means still Peter Svidler is out. Daniil Dubov is in the semi-final. He will play against Jan Krzysztof Duda there. So starting from tomorrow, it will be the next stage of Grand Prix Hamburg. So 4 players left. It's once again a remake. So the similarities do not end there. It's a remake in the upper half of the bracket. Yeah, once again, the reminder of the result in this match. But now if you look at the brackets, it's the remake of Riga Grand Prix in the upper part of the bracket, because we have Maxim Vachier-Lagrave and Alexander Grishuk playing in the semi-final. So for Maxim, it was sort of a déjà vu. So he wins round 1. He had a different opponent, though. It was David Navarra. Then he's paired against Veselin Topalov. He wins first game with black, then makes a comfortable draw with white, advances to the semi-final, where he's facing Alexander Grishuk. So in the lower bracket, it's Daniil Dubov against Jan Krzysztof Duda. So we will inevitably have in the final one of the representatives of young generation. And both of those guys are really, really specialists if it ever comes to the rapid or blitz. Dubov being current rapid world champion, and Duda, guess what, silver medalist in World Blitz Championship right after Magnus Carlsen. So really interesting semi-finals will start tomorrow, and I believe it'll be it for today. So right before signing off, once again, let me thank those who made this event possible. So thanks to Zagreb, strategic partner of the Grand Prix Series, Algorand, the blockchain partner of World Chess, then Bielorussia Shipyard, the partner of the event in Hamburg, and Kaspersky, the cybersecurity partner of the cycle. Well, thanks very much. Thanks for watching. Once again, a bit of disappointment I'm having as well now. The bias has to be revealed. I'm a big supporter of Peter Svidler. Not that I have something against Daniil Dubov, but a young lad clearly has a bright future, and he confirmed it there. But yeah, Peter really had a chance, which he blew away. Anyway, I'll be back tomorrow to cover the semi-finals. So 2 games, 2 classical games followed by potential tiebreak. There were no tiebreaks after the semi-finals in Riga. Let's see what's going to happen in Hamburg. Stay tuned, guys, and same time, remember, same time tomorrow, 3 p.m. Hamburg time, and adjust accordingly to your time zone.